Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto was Legend of Konoha with Harem Shinobi movie? It's an unfortunate thing to be a ninja. It's not as glamorous as the various posters that are plastered across the walls of a village make it out to be. The thrill of becoming an infamous shinobi is shadowed by the fierce, and obviously, life-threatening reality of life as a trained killer. The hardening sensation of knowing you're fighting for people you care about is dimmed by rivalry and competition. The joy of teamwork is erased by the death of a comrade. The elation of success is drowned out by the more common despair of loss. Hashirama Senju, founder and first Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. A shinobi is not one who fights simply to survive on his or her own. A shinobi is a tool, to be used in the forging of a future. A ninja may walk past 1,000 children from their village and be assured that they are alive due to their sacrifices. Sakumo Hatake, White Fang of the Leaf. Shinobi aren't made in gyms, or in chakra and yoga classes. They're made from something deep inside a desire, a dream, a vision. They must fuse both will and skill. Iruka Amino. A shinobi is a man-turned-monster, born from the desire to both conquer and survive. Madara Uchiha, founder of the Hidden Leaf Village, patriarch of the Uchiha clan. Conquer and survive. Those two words describe perfectly the men who were celebrated as the founders of the Hidden Leaf Village, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Both were men who forced themselves to lose their humanity and pick up the ancient trade of ninjutsu. They traveled from one corner of the earth to another, surviving and conquering in search of a place to call home. Both were friends who suffered together, ate together, laughed together. But the life of a shinobi is a harsh one, and as the story goes, Madara succumbed to its effects and fell victim to its vices. Betraying his comrades, he went on a quest for power, eventually clashing with his old rival Hashirama. An epic battle ensued, with neither appearing to be the immediate victor. It went on for, as the legends claim, 3 days and 3 nights before, under the moon of the third night, an exhausted Madara fell to his knees. That same ancient, ominous moon watched over him as he breathed his last, beckoning him to his eternal fate. Hashirama would later swear that, as he fell on his back and glanced at the eternal darkness above, that the stars blinked out of existence, snuffing themselves out one by one as if some cosmic force was turning off the lights of heaven. And in their memory, 2 colossal stone monuments, each more than 200 feet tall, were erected in the land where they fought, one of Madara and one of Hashirama, facing each other, ready for war, together at last. Between the two rushed and roared a mighty waterfall, said to have been created by a clash of water jutsu, sending its thundering contents to the still lake below. And there the two stood, for countless years, a memorial to fallen warriors. To the Hidden Leaf Village, it was a statement of victory. Hashirama, by virtue of being the victor, laid claim to the title of first Hokage, the first leader of the Hidden Leaf Village, and led his village to an era of unparalleled success, becoming the fastest-growing shinobi village, both militarily and economically. This was partly due to his charismatic personality and easygoing nature. Hashirama, by succeeding against Madara, birthed the will of fire, that old sense of unity that had allowed the Hidden Leaf to survive countless attempts at eradication, 3 separate shinobi wars, 5 Hokage, multiple coup and assassination attempts, and at the very least, 1 invasion by a tailed beast. Unity in times of crisis. Well, as he stood wearily on Hashirama's vast stone head, the irony was not lost on Naruto Uzumaki. Breathing heavily, he gazed into the confusing mix of mist and stone under the dark and gray skies, gauging the distance he would have to jump to get to Madara's head. His standard form blue shinobi sandals were caked in mud and logged down with water from the vast lake below. His infamous orange jumpsuit was splattered with dirt and blood. It hadn't rained yet, but the spray and the damp had soaked him to the bone, making him shiver. Or was he just nervous? He didn't like being up here. Most wouldn't know it just by judging by his infamous history of pranks, painting the Hokage monument, various apartment blocks, etc., but Naruto wasn't the biggest fan of heights. Especially when the wind was roughing up and his footwear was wet. Rubbing and scraping his right foot into the Shodem Hokage's head, he slowly breathed out and tried to concentrate on his surroundings, listening quietly to the rustling grit of sandal on stone. Eerily he peered over the edge of Hashirama's head, past the low-lying mist and below to the vast waters of the lake. Beyond them lay the rock ledges which he had traversed to get here. Further past them lay the vast forest which protected the Leaf Village and gave it its infamous name. It was a long way to the bottom. Shaking his head slightly, Naruto brushed those thoughts out of his head and focused on the boy standing on the statue opposite him. As if fate was toying with itself, Sasuke Uchiha stood on top of his ancestor's head, or more specifically, on one of the various locks that made up his infamous mane. Naruto didn't know it yet, but Sasuke was nervous. Both had expended their vast chakra reserves through various exploits only hours previously, Sasuke from attempting to survive a ritual whilst trapped in a sealed container. Naruto whilst attempting to catch up to the group of ninja carrying said container. A lack of chakra wasn't the main reason the Uchiha heir was nervous. It was the various possibilities and impossibilities that ran through his mind that really shook him. Naruto was strong. Stronger than anyone gave him credit for. How someone as pathetic and weak as Naruto had climbed up in strength whilst he, the scion of one of Konoha's founding clans, possessor of the last true Sharingan, had achieved minimal success more than annoyed him. It infuriated him. To such an extent that Sasuke, of course, betrayed the Hidden Leaf Village in one of the most horrific ways possible. Consorting with a known war criminal, a man who experimented on men, women and children, in exchange for power. But what else was he to do? His growth rate was slower than even a fool who had failed to produce even a simple clone. A person who had obtained some of the lowest test scores in the history of Hidden Leaf Shinobi Academy. Why was the dead last loser such a strong shinobi? How had he succeeded in defeating the monstrous Gaara, whilst he, an Uchiha, cowered in fear? How had he succeeded in defeating the various shinobi that accosted them in the land of the snow, whilst he, an Uchiha, had faltered behind? How had he succeeded in facing Suin, the traitor of the waterfall, whilst he, an Uchiha, was incapacitated? How had he defeated a ninja like Neji Hyuga, described as a shinobi more talented even than Sasuke, whilst the Uchiha's fight against Gaara was described as desperate at best? These things shook his pride and forced him to confront his innermost self. Something Sok was afraid of committing to because he knew it would reveal some things he would rather remain hidden. Most prominently was that Sasuke was weak at heart, and he was afraid to admit it. The incident which had forged his personality was a most grievous and tragic one. It had hardened him, forced him to forego any sense of friendship or kin. Sasuke was a naturally cheery person. He was soft-hearted. It was his brother Itachi who would kill without a flicker in his eye. And so, the Uchiha heir abandoned his growing ties to his village, tossed away his bonds, and doused his will of fire. And that was what led them to stand in front of each other. Rival versus rival, ninja versus ninja, Uchiha versus Uzumaki, and, dare Sok say it, friend versus friend. Sasuke didn't know what to feel about Naruto. He didn't know much about him and he really didn't care. Naruto was useless as a ninja, and even more worthless as a human being. He possessed absolutely no talent in ninjutsu. His taijutsu was so bad that he broke his own fingers multiple times, doing simple maneuvers that Sasuke had memorized from the age of 3. And don't even get him started on genjutsu. For heaven's sake, Naruto was confused about the nature of chakra as a force, despite graduating from the academy. When Sasuke first met Naruto, he disliked him from the get-go. Not out of some genuine hatred, but a desire to avoid the blonde in general. Naruto seemed to be someone no one liked or cared about or even noticed. Over time, Sasuke had developed a dislike of Naruto that bordered on hatred. For the mere fact that the blonde disrespected him by yelling out to the world for all to hear, repeatedly, that he was better than Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto was so stupid that he considered someone like himself to be on Sasuke's level. Sasuke remembered clearly the first time Naruto had made that announcement to the surprise and jeering laughter of the academy class. It had been a few months since the incident where his brother had wiped out their family, torturing him and leaving him for dead. Sasuke had kept to himself, despite the best efforts of his ridiculous fan club, and sat in the corner barely taking note of what was now the daily shouting match between Iruka and a tied-up Naruto. Iruka demanded that Naruto take his shinobi career seriously, or else leave the academy. Naruto shot back right away that he was already the best in the class and could kick the bastard's ass from here to the village gates and back. Sasuke didn't know who the bastard was until he realized that Naruto was explicitly referring to him. He had almost taken Naruto's offer of a fight then and there until he steeled himself and reminded himself who it was that was making these claims. The ninja equivalent of a tadpole. And so began a long period of intense rivalry, mostly incited by Naruto, but often, and acknowledged by Sasuke, although he'd never admit it. The fighting would begin because he'd give Naruto a glare, as if to say, "You dare threaten me." And then one day, Sasuke had discovered that Naruto was an orphan, just like he was. And for the first time since he had met the blonde, Sasuke drew blank. For the briefest instance, Sasuke understood him. Sasuke knew him. Sasuke sympathized with him. He knew why Naruto chose to act like a deluded moron. He knew why Naruto would scowl at everyone for an instant, then slap on a cheesy grin the next. He knew why Naruto would stick with the loser Inuzuka and the Akamichi and Nara heirs, despite the fact that they generally didn't seem to care about him or consider him at all. Naruto wanted acceptance, and something screamed inside of Sasuke to give it to him. But he didn't. He developed a connection with Naruto that he couldn't understand. Sasuke hadn't smiled in months since the incident with his clan and his brother, but this annoying blonde parasite, this ridiculous moron, this pathetic excuse of a ninja, had excited him and lit a spark in him for conflict. Naruto had made Sasuke happy. They weren't in the same boat, mind you. Naruto never had a family to lose in the first place. But that essence of complete loneliness. The knowledge that there was no one, absolutely no one who knew you, who really, truly, cared for you, who understood and accepted you. That could make mice out of monsters and monsters out of men. Sasuke didn't know which one he was. And so, Sasuke watched Naruto grow, confused as to whether he was a man or a monster, but never getting his answer. He watched as Naruto and he were put on the same team. He watched as Naruto messed up on their first real mission. He watched as he and Naruto teamed up to land a blow on one of the famed swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. He watched as his body flung itself in front of an oncoming storm of Senbon needles, absorbing the blow for his teammate, for his comrade, for his friend. Sasuke frowned. He had also watched as Naruto grew in skill almost exponentially, whilst Sasuke's development was curbed and made redundant. He had watched as Naruto blew straight past shinobi that would have normally torn him to shreds, whilst Sasuke struggled with basic grunts, and finally, he had watched as Naruto had ripped a water tank in shards, using a jutsu that he had never seen before, and one even he couldn't predict or copy. Whilst Sasuke's strongest technique, his one-eyed sensei's famed Chidori, had merely blown a small hole in one. Naruto had lit a spark inside of Sasuke, but he had turned into a firestorm. They stood without moving for what seemed to be quite some time, simply choosing to stare at, or in Naruto's case, glaring at each other, as if waiting upon some omnipotent signal to let themselves loose. Whilst wiping his face with the damp sleeve of his jumpsuit, leaving a cold afterthought on his whiskered face, Naruto snarled, shivering into the bitter twilight. Perhaps as a jest from God, the wind whistled by, ripping leaves from their trees and dust from the colossi. One particular leaf caught the keen eyes of both boys, and they watched it dance in the shifting currents, twirling and twirling to the calm waters below, far beyond the sight of you or I. Slowly, it approached the stilled blue lake and in a single motion, stirred its waters. At once, the two young men crouched low and in a single blur of hand seals, called forth their signature jutsus. The crackling chirping of 1,000 birds drowned out the waterfall for Sasuke, whilst the swirling, sucking sounds of a hurricane in his hand, simply added to Naruto's growing disdain. Both couched even further as if tigers preparing to lunge at prey. Sasuke growled. It wasn't enough. Whatever he was doing wasn't enough. Naruto would win this and there was nothing he could do. And so Sasuke did what he knew he may regret, and allowed his curse seal to fully adapt to itself, surrounding his body in glowing black marks, coated with a blazing red, which were emitted from the epicenter of the original curse seal. Huge, archaic, monstrous hands erupted from his back as if some demonic wings sprouting on a fallen angel. Slowly, his body tarred itself, first a tawny gray, then a deep and morbid black. A blistering scar burst on his forehead in the form of a four-pronged star, the low point of which ripped to the tip of his nose. The brilliant blue lightning that shrieked and screamed in his hands suddenly stammered as it faded to black, now ominously pulsing. Naruto watched his former friend with a scowl on his face. He knew that Sasuke desired power and that right now, he was getting it from that curse mark thingy that Snake Freak had given him back in the forest during the Chunin exam. Naruto didn't know much about it, but from what he'd forced out of Kakashi and Jiraiya and what a stuttering Sakura had reluctantly told him, it gave him formidable power at the cost of his sanity. Apparently, Sasuke had almost ripped some guy's arms off. Naruto dismissed that as bullshit automatically. But if Sasuke was relying on some demonic power to help him in this fight, then it would make sense for Naruto to do the same, right? After all, Sasuke had wanted to see his true power, and sure, this technically wasn't his, but if he was to be treated like trash his whole life, and the same village he wanted to be Hokage of was gonna treat him like crap for something he didn't know about until he was 12, he might as well make the best of it. Now that he thought about it, he actually had more experience with demon seals than Sasuke. Not that the Uchiha would ever find out, he just probably thought that it was some weird bloodline Naruto somehow sprouted. With a feral growl, Naruto closed his eyes and concentrated. For the briefest of moments, he was inside his mind, standing ankle deep in cold sewer water, staring at vast red iron bars in front of him. Darkness veiled the entirety of the background, painting the vast ceiling in black, covering the bars as they ascended into the beyond. In a flash, two vast dark red orbs lit up above him and he heard a deep, ominous, and monstrous laughter resonate from below within the prison. Opening his eyes, Naruto focused on Sasuke, unaware of the orange glow that now surrounded his body, are the two furious tails of chakra that whipped behind him. He could feel his eyesight getting sharper, witnessing the myriad of cracks in Madara's visage from his distance. He could feel his nose pricking up, noticing various smells he hadn't before, the salty stench of the sea, and the crusted wooden aroma of the forests. He could see the early evening frost on the leaves. He could see the dirt on Sasuke's shoes. He could feel his skin awash with sudden heat, feeling sensations he never had before. The swirling wind within his hands now frothed with power, emitting a weird dark orange glow. Naruto was ashamed to admit he liked it. Sure, he liked jutsu that just seemed to ooze power, but really, using that thing's power? Out of the question. Jiraiya-sensei told him to only use it in times of crisis. To Naruto, his best friend standing only 300 feet away from him, covered in weird handwing things, readying to fire an assassination-level jutsu at him, technically counted. Was this what the snake offered Sasuke? Turning him into a pawn, a puppet, some freak from a horror story. That same snake bastard had killed the third, and now not only was Sasuke using his power, but he was willing to give up his own life in exchange for it. Stupid bastard Sasuke. Why couldn't he just train hard like everyone else? Heck, Lee didn't even have chakra as far as Naruto knew, and you didn't see him jumping at the first sight of a new power-up from hell. Both of them stood prepared now, readying themselves for the final clash. The sky above them, once tinged with orange and yellow as the sun nestled into the horizon, now stood a dark blue, the waters below them blacked in reflection. In the distance, above the huge leafy forests with its numberless trees, was a small yellow glow. Staring at each other, Naruto's vicious glare matching Sasuke's creepy grin, they stood their ground, before, in a flash, they each took a step forward and pumped chakra into their legs, jumping off their respective colossi. Sasuke's hand wings snapped open, before beating down, giving him an extra burst of speed with their demented flapping. Hurtling toward each other, each screaming at the top of their lungs, their destructive jutsu thrusting forward. Naruto, Sasuke, in a single spontaneous second, they collided, jutsu slamming against jutsu, lightning waging war against wind. With a bang, a quick flash burst from the meeting point, which was soon faded away in the aftermath of a far, far larger explosion. The waves formed by the meeting point caused the water below to explode into motion. The trees were ripped and uprooted from the trunks by the pulsing blasts that were emitted. Hurricane-force winds separated leaf from branch by the hundreds of thousands. Stone and earth were flung into the sky, coating the air with dust. The piercing sound was harsh but short as both jutsus cancelled each other out, viciously clawing at each other for dominance. A few miles away, a small dog dressed in ninja clothing stopped mid-jump, landing on a branch with a short huff. Beside him stood a man who had done just the same, sporting typical Junin attire, a half mask, and tilted headband. Junin Hitaki Kakashi blinked and glanced at his summon. Pakun had a dissatisfied look on his face. "Nay, Kakashi, you heard that right." The masked nin moved his head in the direction of the sound and blinked again, his neutral face straining to hide his emotions. "Yeah, let's go." In an instant, he had burst a few branches ahead, bounding from tree to tree, making his way to the place where his wayward students were doing mortal combat, his form a mere shimmer, aftermath, displaying his frightening skills. Pakun humphed and pounced away after his master, catching up to him in several leaps. He wasn't surprised at all that the Uchiha had betrayed the village. He'd told Kakashi it was a mistake to teach him the Chidori, that there was darkness in his heart. Pakun was good at sensing stuff like that. That was his job. To sense things. He was good at it too, so good that he had already sniffed the small group of medic nin picking up on their trail. So it didn't surprise him at all that his master's student ended up exactly like how he'd predicted. Kakashi didn't have the heart to tell him he had started to teach Sasuke the basics of the Reikiri. 5 minutes of bounding later, the weary figures reached the smoldering site of the clash. Smoke rose from swaths of trees as a small fire started to spread, no doubt caused by the Kyuubi chakra, Pakun mused. They both slinked down the length of the cliff to reach the small beach that pressed against the rocks. Large, cracked, burnt boulders marked the area of contact to the final forms of the jutsus in the earth below. The devastation was awe-inspiring. New crates shad formed, embedded into the rocky legs of both Madara and Hashirama, even though the jutsu had clashed in the middle of the lake some 300 meters away. The sheer force used here was shocking. Out of the corner of Kakashi's singular eye, he spotted a solitary figure lying against one of the bounded rocks, only to notice Pakun had beaten him to it. Curious as to who the figure was, Kakashi raced towards his companion, watching as Pakun's wet salivated mouth licked and felt the air around the body. With a small nod, the dog spoke out, "Uchiha." Jolting forward, Kakashi jumped down the incline to reach his student's blood-drenched body. He immediately noticed the mangled right hand, the small, shredded hole on Sasuke's right side, still spilling blood onto the mud below, the way Sasuke's left hand clutched his stomach, acknowledging the cracked ribs below. Feeble groans indicated that the last Uchiha was still alive, although barely. He began crying out painfully. Upon noticing the overlying figure of his sensei, through his thinly cracked eyes, Sasuke cursed under his breath. He had failed. What now? What was he to do? Surely the leaf would stunt his growth. Surely there would be a near-capital punishment for this. Sasuke would be stripped of his ninja rank. The name of the Uchiha would be smeared forever. His house taken, his family scrolls gone. And worst of all, he would never get his revenge. Konoha would never allow him to form a jutsu as long as he lived. He may as well kill himself now. But in the midst of all that, Sok had a small smile on his face, so small you would swear it wasn't there at all. But under all that, Sok felt strangely happy. Well, that answers that question. Guess the loser wasn't so bad after all. Guess I'll just. Unaware of his student's musings and trip into unconsciousness, Kakashi struggled to get Sasuke's heart rate back up. The Uchiha's vital signs were almost gone, fading into the nether realm. Hearing a sudden whoosh, Kakashi stood up immediately, knowing who it would be. He faced the masked medic nins, draped in white, and blinked as one of them took a step forward. "Thank you for taking care of things, we'll take it from here, Hitaki-sensei." Kakashi nodded and stood back to let the group rush forward and surround his traitorous student, each emitting a small green glow from their hands. His ears twitched as he heard his summon bark from 50 feet behind him. "Ah, Kakashi. I found Uzumaki. Best come over here. Things ain't looking good." In an instant, Pakun found his master standing to his blonde and most surprising student. Pakun had no idea what to think of Naruto when he first saw him. He knew who it was instantly, he knew who his father and mother were, he knew that he had vast chakra reserves, and he knew the Kyuubi lay inside him, slumbering in his prison. But he didn't know about Naruto Uzumaki personally. Was he a loyal friend? Was he a good man? These questions answered themselves in due time. Pakun had noticed that whenever Kakashi spoke to his summons regarding his students, that while most of the conversation tended to revolve around the Uchiha, on the occasions that he spoke of Naruto, Pakun could feel the brief tinge of pride in his voice. So it hurt Pakun, seeing his master's student in such a condition. Kakashi was fumbling furiously to get Naruto's blood-soaked, singed, and mud-caked jumpsuit off him, to get to the enormous pool of blood below. It appeared that Naruto had a significant hole in his chest. A whole chunk had been ripped off from his right abdomen. Caused no doubt by the Chidori. Kakashi was consumed with guilt instantly. He blamed himself for this. He considered himself a good judge of character, but he could never have foreseen that Sasuke would use this against the boy he described as his best friend. Luckily for Naruto, The Chidori, being a form of lightning, had a vast heating effect and had literally burnt most of his blood vessels shut, whereas the Rasengan had mercilessly ripped Sasuke's skin open. In a way, Kakashi was glad Sasuke had suffered greater damage. He deserved it. Nevertheless, as the medic nin patched up both ninja, both having fallen unconscious due to exhaustion, Kakashi sat on the rocks above, musing to himself, staring at the ever-darkening skies. This was a strange day. And nothing, not one damn thing, would be the same again. Even if by some miracle, both boys were alright and could fight again, who knew what the High Council would do? Normally, Sasuke would be put to death, but Kakashi knew that would never happen. Perhaps they would extract his DNA, but that was possibly tainted by the curse seal. The council knew that it could do stuff like that internally, hence why Anko would never have children. Maybe they'd force him to have several children with women of their choice while he was still young and fresh to the seal. For being renowned as the freest of the 5 great shinobi villages, Konoha sure had some weird practices. Heck, knowing how much they praised bloodline clans, or how much they valued them, giving the power that bloodline clans had in the village, Kakashi wouldn't be surprised if all Sasuke got was an Anbu group to tail him 24/7. Fuck it, they might even let him off scot-free, using the seal messing with his mind as some excuse. Unfortunately, Kakashi knew it would probably work. There was precedent for it. The only other known survivor of Orochimaru's curse seal, Anko Mitarashi, was known to showcase certain issues in particular situations. She was contained and set free sometime later with a record, docked pay, and C-class missions only for a great length of time. The council would use that case to exhibit Sasuke and the seal as separate, and therefore the Uchiha couldn't possibly have committed a crime, seeing as it wasn't him in control. What would bolster that view was that no one had died during the mission, at least as far as Kakashi was aware. The real question was, what would happen to Naruto? Logically nothing, considering he was following orders and did the right thing, stopping a bloodline from falling into Orochimaru's hands. But the council was overzealous when it came to the young Jinchuriki. They disagreed with the decision to let him become a ninja and had in fact at times proposed he live outside of the village walls. Kakashi, though, knew absolutely nothing would happen to him. The Hokage would make sure of it, and if the council tried, they'd have to take it up with her. And so, Kakashi pushed that from his mind. Ridiculous. Why would the council even think about punishing Naruto? He hadn't done a single thing wrong. Broken from his thoughts by the voice of a medic nin telling him his boys were sufficiently patched up for the journey home, Kakashi nodded and got up. Tilting his head to Pakun, he winked. Pakun HM med, and disappeared with a poof. Striding to his students, Kakashi pulled his hands out of his pockets, bending over to pick up the young blonde one, now wearing nothing but his damp jumpsuit trousers and a new tight black fishnet mesh shirt that one of the medic nin must have given him. Under that, Kakashi could see the bulging array of bandages, as well as the circles of white layers draped around Naruto's head. His other, less loyal student was in a similar condition. Hitaki-san, cried out one medic nin from behind, "We can help you carry them." "No, it's fine. I'll deal with these two. There were others on this mission. Tend to them." With a curt bow, the white-coated shinobi burst off into the trees. Slinging both young men onto his shoulders, Hitaki Kakashi gave the skies one last look, sighed to himself, and set off up the rocks and through the huge forests. Reaching the massive gates of the Hidden Leaf Village wasn't easy with 2 young teens on his shoulders, but Kakashi managed it with relative ease. Both were pretty easy to carry, especially Naruto, who had wrapped his arms around his sensei and began mumbling in his sleep with a smile on his face. Sparing only a small, "Excuse me," glance at Izumo and Kotetsu, both of whom looked shocked, as he walked past, he immediately sensed the presence of 6 other shinobi. A small whir later, the Anbu surrounded him. With a minor bow to his infamous predecessor, one with an owl mask stepped forward and with a neutral, monotonous called out to him. "Junin Hitaki Kakashi, your presence is required at the Grand Inquisitor's Hall at the Palace of Hokage-sama. The 2 you have retrieved shall be brought to the Shinobi Hospital. Please, at once." Kakashi didn't know what to make of it. Why would the council call a meeting when the shinobi who was no doubt the cause of said meeting, the Uchiha that he handed over to the Anbu, was unconscious? Surely protocol dictated that a shinobi be present at any hearing in which she was the focus. Unless of course this meeting was dedicated to something else. With a leap to the top of the nearest roof, Kakashi made his way to the Hokage Palace, its massive red tower planted in the deep left center of the village, to the east of the Hokage monument. Once there, he rushed past the surprised secretary who let out a small eep at the suddenness of his arrival. Fixing her hair, she leapt up to catch up to him and immediately began bombarding him with information. Apparently, the council had been in meeting for quite some time now. It seems they were all well aware of the situation. The shinobi guards that stood to attention outside the wooden doors had been instructed to ask him to wait until called. Konoha tradition was very formal. A shinobi axed to the Grand Inquisitor's hall would face a series of questions in front of the Hokage, the various clan heads, civilian representatives from the daimyo, and a small handful of allied towns and villages inside the Fire Country. Said shinobi would only be allowed entrance if his or her name was called from the hall whilst its doors were closed. He or she would be asked to place their headbands in the hands of an accompanying adjudicator. The shinobi to be questioned could be the one who was the focus of the trial, or they could be any random shinobi the council deemed worthy to question. Seeing as he hadn't done anything wrong, as far as he could tell, Kakashi assumed he was of the latter. The seal on the ancient wooden door glowed for a brief moment before he heard a small voice. Enter Junin Hitaki Kakashi, serial number 88241. Taking off his headband, Kakashi handed it to an awaiting masked ninja, keeping his famed left eye shut, letting the scar free for all who cared to view it. The doors creaked open and Kakashi walked inside. No more moping about, this was serious stuff. No doubt the council would buzz him on why it is his student had decided to turn traitor, seeing as no other Junin of his generation had a wayward student. Kakashi reminisced in the musty stench of the hall. It had been a while since he'd stepped foot in here. Last time he'd stood in the hall, he had been informed that Anbu member 34892M, one Itachi Uchiha, had slaughtered the vast majority of his own family. That was a fun night. The Grand Inquisitor's hall was a hall as large as the one the Genin teams had had their preliminary bouts in during the Chunin exam when Naruto had defeated Kiba using rather unorthodox methods. Kakashi had almost laughed. The one to be questioned stood in the center of the hall, facing pedestals that rose above like a judge's pulpit. There were stairs to either side of the pedestals. Clan members and others would use the stairs to take their seats on the risen table. The higher up your seat, the more important you were deemed to be. As such, the Hokage, a very tired and irritated-looking Tsunade, sat in the center, glaring down at Kakashi. To her left, sat the daimyo's representative and the elders of the council, Kaharu, Homura, and Danzo, and to her right sat the clan leaders. To the left again, further from the advisors, sat the representatives of the civilian councils. Originally they were never part of the high councils, but after a large petition to the daimyo, stating that they needed to be involved in the affairs of the shinobi they were supposed to trust with their lives, they were given several seats. Kakashi really didn't like these guys, but at least they had no power. This was a shinobi matter. What was more concerning for him was the presence of the daimyo's representative. Normally absent, the thin, wiry man was present and seemed to be in quite the mood today. Sporting his mandatory white shawl, with the symbol of the daimyo emblazoned on the back, Hiroshi Nakamoto was also flipping through papers. Pale, with a flop of gray-brown hair, a tired and smug look ever present on his face, while his famous stick-like mustache, split in the middle glued to his mouth, remained unmoved despite the slight tugging at the corner of his lips, his beady eyes scanning through pages as if trying to find something. He was calm and looked tired and bored, something Kakashi knew was a mask, but it was obvious that there was something he was amused by. As the daimyo's representative, Nakamoto was there as a show of the daimyo's ownership and command, essentially, of Konoha. Whilst Tsunade was in essence the president and prime minister of Konoha, the daimyo was the king. Never truly involved, but whenever he spoke, his word was final. This council could vote unanimously on an issue, and as long as the daimyo disagreed, the issue would never come to fruition. It was the same for all the 5 great villages, but the last daimyo was smart in the sense that he let the Hokages run the place without much disagreement. Kind and benevolent, but still commanding and strict when he could be, Shinobu Tokugawa was the quintessential daimyo, having run the Land of Fire for more than 67 years. His passing just after the Kyuubi attack was a quiet and moody occasion. The sky broke and the storms howled, for a day and a half, including when the Lord Third attended his funeral, when Kakashi walked alongside Hiruzen Sarutobi's caravan, drenched. The current daimyo, the 17th, his firstborn son Shinpachi Tokugawa, was the complete opposite. Whilst his father was wise and maintained a close on the hidden leaf without much input, Shinpachi didn't care at all. As far as Kakashi was aware, the daimyo had never even come to this village, whilst his father was known to come at least once every 5 years. Known for his hedonistic and materialistic ways, the new daimyo had been informed of his father's passing whilst swimming in his personal hot bath, in his personal villa, in the mountains of the east, surrounded by women. He had told the messenger to bring more sake and leave him alone. It was not until the 4th day after his father's passing that he had apparently shown any grief, having spent the previous 3 days and nights covered in women and drink. After claiming the throne of fire, the new daimyo had demanded an expansion of his harem, and when informed that this had been deemed impermissible by his own father, he had tried to remove it. Upon being informed that his father had enshrined it into law and was unchangeable, he was furious. He had demanded that the 3rd Hokage send him kunoichi to satiate his fetishes. The 3rd had refused until the daimyo had calmed down and saw reason. That's not to say he wasn't a good ruler, in terms of administration, whilst honestly lacking the skills of his father, Shinpachi Tokugawa was not terrible. He wasn't a dictator and didn't condemn criticism. And he was more than susceptible to change of opinion, often making random gestures to the public in order to increase his popularity. After a few years where he discovered that he would never be as popular as his father, Shinpachi Tokugawa gave up and in essence, locked himself in his palace. Nowadays, he simply didn't care and did whatever his advisors told him to do. The last time Kakashi had ever seen him was on a personal mission given to him by the 3rd, deliver a request for the Hokage to attend the coronation of his sensei, the Lord 4th. Shinpachi Tokugawa looked bored, resting his head on his arm, which was positioned on his armrest in his grand throne, swirling a cup of the finest and most expensive sake the land had to offer in his other. He had refused without much thought, saying he would meet Minato Namikaze, when said blonde legend would visit him for the mandatory introduction with the daimyo and the swearing of loyalty. Nakamoto, his representative, was there to put forth the opinion of the daimyo and exhibited the same qualities as the current daimyo, although it was far more cunning. Kakashi didn't know if Nakamoto had any personal ambitions, but he had never seemed to express them. Despite it being a necessity for him to attend every meeting, Nakamoto rarely came, sending his reason for his absence to either Kaharu or Homura. Never Danzo for some reason. Speaking of, Danzo was also present but didn't seem much different or bothered, simply staring into the distance. Who knew what went on inside his bandaged head? Woken from his thoughts by the gruff scoff of a civilian member, Kakashi tilted his head to the right and eyed Tsunade with a boring look. The 5th Hokage looked like she'd aged more than 20 years since he'd last seen her. Chin balanced on her hands, fingers entwined, Tsunade looked both furious and exhausted. She didn't need this. There was a strict code about the punishment a ninja was to face if they betrayed their village and were caught. Immediate execution on the spot. Instead, the council had woken her from her little sleep break and called her up to the hall to discuss. Discuss what? That ridiculous Uchiha and his pathetic attempt at a power grab. Tsunade had no problem with his execution, but she doubted the council shared her view. Even the ninja half would disagree. While they favored loyalty above all, the Sharingan was the single most prominent bloodline in the world. Its loss would be devastating for Konoha, especially if word got out that it was completely voluntary. For all she cared, she would have the boy locked and semen samples were taken and cloned, maybe some to test on, or some to impregnate Hyuga members, to see what kind of bloodline emerged. She shuddered. Sometimes, she wondered who the real mad scientist was, her or Orochimaru. Seeing as the requested shinobi had now made his appearance, she decided to start. Clearing her throat to silence the quiet discussions which were going on by various members of the council, she stood up, as was required by law. This meeting is now open. Given the serious nature of the events that have occurred in the past 10 hours, the advisory council. Pausing, while emphasizing the word, advisory, with obvious displeasure, Tsunade shot a short, brief glare at Kaharu and Homura, who didn't seem to be bothered much by the display of contempt shown to them by the Hokage. Dot has deemed it necessary to convene and discuss what occurred as well as what will happen in our response. The Honorable Recollector of the Council is asked to repeat and reiterate the events for the knowledge of the members present. Nearly jumping up, a very short, bearded, and pale man stood up and fixed his large glasses and cleared his throat. Thank you. Lady Hokage. As the recollector of the council, I will now relay the events which have caused us to convene. These will be recorded under Section 34, Article 5 of the Code of Standards for Meetings and Procedures. The following is confidential and has been allocated a classification of SS class security. Those who do not possess this classification, namely the honorable members of the civilian councils, with the exception of the elected chief representative, are asked henceforth to sign confidentiality forms. These will be presented to you by the Anbu present. You must sign these, and take an oath of confidence before the continuation of the session. A quiet, mundane shuffling was the only sound heard for the next few minutes, with the exception of the solitary cough and a few odd whispers, as the civilian council members walked forwards, recited an oath to an oathkeeper, a short old man with a beard longer than he was tall, and signed a form on the desk next to him, before returning to their seats. The recollector continued, Ahem. Thank you all. I shall now begin the affirmed recollection of events. Steadying himself, he took a breath and spoke in his nervous voice, tinged with a hint of sageness. On January 13, 4x, at approximately 4:25 a.m., Genin Sasuke Uchiha, UF 234, of Konoha Shinobi Military Branch, Nara, Team 7, ventured past the position of the village chakra boundaries. Permission was not given to him for this passage, thus the locator shinobi were alerted and a quick venture team was produced, consisting of civilian police, to ask information in the nearby areas from civilians who may have seen him, and of shinobi to begin a quick venture to retrieve him. Junin Kakashi Hatake, who stands before this honorable council, is Uchiha-san's formal sensei. The local hunter nin team was informed of this event at 4:42 a.m., and 6.5 minutes later, they discovered the body of Genin Sakura Haruno, RE 442, Konoha Shinobi Military Branch, Nara, Team 7. Another of Junin Hatake's students. Returning her to the hospital, it was discovered that she is alive, and was simply incapacitated by Genin Uchiha. The conclusion thus far is that Genin Uchiha made her unconscious, in order to prevent her from interfering with his decision to betray our village. Upon her awakening, she was questioned and confirmed this status. He took a drink of clear water from his desk and cleared his throat before beginning again. Our Honorable Lady Hokage was informed of these events at 4:41, wherein she informed the hunter team to inform Chunin Shikamaru Nara, Konoha Shinobi Military Branch, Nara, formerly Team 10, that he was to be assigned the mission of retrieving Genin Uchiha and preventing his defection from the Leaf. Junin Hatake, his sensei, was otherwise unable to do this, as he was on another previously assigned mission. A retrieval mission was officially confirmed and a team was rapidly formed and ordered to retrieve the Uchiha by any means necessary, except death. He scanned the room to see if anyone was still paying attention, only to see that yes indeed, people were paying attention, but growing tired and bored by the second. This mission consisted of various shinobi of Genin class, except for Chunin Nara. Per the latest reports, this team encountered shinobi loyal to the traitorous Orochimaru. They were assisted in defeating these cruel foes by notable shinobi of the Hidden Sand, to whom this honorable council requests an official confirmation of gratitude. The conclusion thus far, and from previous reports and worthwhile knowledge obtained on Genin Uchiha, is that he was ordained with the mark of Orochimaru, during his Chunin exams, and was thus influenced psychologically to defect and join Orochimaru's ranks. Well, there it is, Kakashi mused to himself. They were going to blame the defection on Sasuke's poor mental state due to the curse seal. In a way he was happy. Because if all this was forgiven, they could go back to being a team again. Maybe this time, he wouldn't mess things up so badly. Due to the presence of Junin Hatake, and the confirmed and reaffirmed presence of Genin Uchiha within the walls of the village, this mission is deemed a success, and the shinobi responsible were fully accounted for, albeit severely injured. It is the conclusion of this honorable council that the matters be discussed further, in order to ascertain the punishment, as required by law, for Genin Uchiha, as well as the summary rewarding and payment of the shinobi involved in his retrieval. A special form of gratitude is issued to the Inuzuka clan, the Akamichi clan, the Nara clan, the Hyuga clan, Genin Rock Lee, and the Uzumaki clan. Quiet but sharp murmurs burst through the room as the council took in the information. Tsunade resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Naruto played the largest role in this but was mentioned last and with disdain. Typical of the council to discriminate. The recollector paused briefly before continuing. The purpose of this council now rests on the following matters. To debate the punishment for Genin Uchiha. Matters to take into account include his status as the heir of the Uchiha clan, the continuation of their bloodline, the legendary Sharingan, as well as to ascertain the reason for his defection. Reports show aggravation from Genin Uchiha as to his progress as a shinobi. A report filed by Junin Hitaki the evening prior showed that Genin Uchiha engaged in a battle with Genin and Naruto Uzumaki, MC 117, Konoha Shinobi Military Branch, Nara, Team 7, the final of Junin Hitaki's team. Pausing again, he glanced at Kakashi, who simply looked at him with impasse. The report details how the two Genins fought to a standstill atop Konoha Military Hospital No. 5. The report further dictates that the two clashed until Junin Hitaki appeared and stopped them. This report showcases and details that Genin Uchiha was unstable and desired to increase his personal power levels. There is deemed to have been no desire for political position, rather simply a motion to improve as a shinobi. The report, in the eyes of this honorable council, shows that Genin Uchiha has maintained this view for quite some time, as thus had his needs as a shinobi improperly met by his sensei. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. They were going to pit the blame on Kakashi. For being a bad sensei and neglecting his students. This same council greenlighted the Uchiha massacre, which Tsunade knew about, but were now going out of their way to be pillars of support for the last completely delusional, traitorous Uchiha. They wouldn't. The conclusion of this council on these matters thus far is, Genin Uchiha felt as if he could not achieve his acquired potential under the hands of his sensei, and that he could fulfill this potential under a different teacher. These feelings were exacerbated by the cursed seal and changed his focus to that of Orochimaru as a possible candidate for this sensei. The genin of this retrieval mission acted accordingly and with merit. They would. Tsunade's eyes snapped to Kakashi, who thus far stood at attention but didn't say anything. This matter has been declared a shinobi matter, thus the honorable members of the civilian council are asked to refrain from making suggestions or conclusions. I yield the floor to our honorable Lady 5th Hokage, and thank you for your attention. The recollector sat down and Tsunade stood up. The matter is now open for suggestions and debate. The civilian council is again reminded not to make a suggestion. Given their presence here, and the sensitive nature of these proceedings, I move to have them excluded from the meeting. Murmurs rose yet again, as the civilian council representative raised his hand. His hand remained aloft as the shinobi side squabbled and talked amongst themselves. The motion keeper, the man who counted the votes, stood up. The motion presented from the Hokage is thus, recluse all further matters from the civilian council. Please cast your votes now. One by one, the members of the shinobi side arose, gave their answer, and then returned to their seats. Eyes and nose abounded the council room. A very tired-looking Shikaku Nara stood up, and before he could give his answer, the motion keeper interrupted. Junin Commander Nara, as Genin Uchiha is under your command, and as you are Junin Commander, your vote will count for 2, please continue. Shikaku Nara responded rapidly. Then I vote 2 ayes. Beside him, his comrades and friends and longtime teammates Shuza Akamichi and Inoichi Yamanaka gave the same response. Tsunade's motion passed overwhelmingly, leading to a rather sullen civilian council moping off and out of the room. Standing up again, trying hard to hide the satisfied smile from her face, Tsunade continued. The council is now open for suggestions and motions regarding the fate of Genin Uchiha. Just a moment, Lady Hokage. It was Nakamoto who had interrupted her, his soft voice giving her goosebumps. Tsunade hated the daimyo and all his representatives. Promiscuous little bastard. She knew that, with the rest of the council, her word was uncontested law. She had earned that right by virtue of being Hokage. But the daimyo? That putrid snake of a man could not only outvote her with a nod but could order that her commands be ignored if he felt like it. He could even strip her of Hokage if he thought as such. And this fungus Nakamoto was not only much worse, he had the terrible characteristic of being intelligent, far more so than his idiotic boss. I must say, the proceedings have shifted rather quickly, no. Firstly, it seems rather unorthodox to remove the civilian council from the chambers. They have as much right to be here as the rest of us. Secondly, we have only just heard the recollector inform us of the possibility that Genin Uchiha's sensei contributed to his decision to defect. I think it would be standard procedure that we discuss every facet of this case, don't you agree? Tsunade grit her teeth calmly. Honorable representative of the daimyo, the civilian council's removal has been approved by the Shinobi Council. Their removal was warranted given the sensitive nature of the proceedings. If there was ever, God forbid, a situation in which a member of the civilian council was captured by a shinobi from an opposing village, then they have not undergone torture sensitivity training, and would thus be unable to prevent themselves from informing others of our confidential proceedings. Nakamoto smiled smugly. Lady Hokage, I must protest this needless exclusion. Such an excuse may be used for all council meetings, thus there would be no need for such a council. However, the Honorable Daimyo has made it perfectly clear they need to be present. I shall, of course, be informing Tokugawa Dono of this matter. Great. Just great. That despicable pervert was going to find out. Not that it mattered. He'll just ask his advisors why it is he should care about this, and they'd tell him that he should care because his father was the one who put the civilian council in Konoha in the first place. And then he'd ask Nakamoto, who'd advise him on a whole host of changes and wait for that oblivious moron to give him a stamp of approval. Lady Hokage, as you state, a vote has been passed and I shall relay this decision to the Lord Daimyo. However, as his presence is lacking in these affairs, I will of course be using my right as his representative to ensure no action, punishment or forgiveness, is carried out or approved until his lordship is aware of these matters in succinct detail. I move to further open the questioning to the floor, regarding this case. My question will be for the sensei, Junin Hitaki, is it? Kakashi's one eye blinked and he nodded softly. Yes, I am Kakashi Hitaki. I'm the Junin sensei of Sasuke Uchiha. Nakamoto's small yet smug smirk never left his face, but his eyes narrowed. Would I be correct in assuming your father was Tsukumo Hitaki, the famed White Fang of the Leaf? Tsunade interjected. What is the reasoning behind this line of questioning Representative Nakamoto? Nakamoto turned his head slowly to face her, still smirking slightly. Lady Hokage, please allow Junin Hitaki to answer the question. This is essential to our understanding of his position as a sensei and why it is that Genin Uchiha took such drastic steps to defect in order to become a stronger shinobi. Kakashi glanced at Tsunade, who returned the stare as she sank into her seat slowly. Kakashi tilted his head ever so slightly, unable to be caught by a civilian, and even most ninja, but Tsunade caught it and understood what it meant. Relax. I got this. Yes, my father was Tsukumo Hitaki. He was also known by that moniker, the White Fang. May I ask, are you aware of the events which surrounded your father's death? Kakashi didn't react. This man was trying, very badly, to get a rise out of him. Of course, Kakashi knew about his father's death as well as what led to it. It was he after all, who had discovered Tsukumo's body. He had to suffer whispers for days, weeks, months, years, from shinobi and civilians alike. His father's old team members, not mates, members, essentially vanished from Kakashi's eyesight, although he had run into them as they retired and become civilians. One of them, a female member, had tried to confront him after he was placed on a mission with her daughter. She had informed him that whatever had happened with his father was in the past, that he should forget it and move on, and to do his duty as a Konoha shinobi. She then walked away, as if nothing in the world had gone wrong. Kakashi did not request to leave the mission, although the daughter was as unapologetic as her mother. Not that he had wanted it, expected it or cared for their apologies. I'm well aware, he replied curtly. Do you think that affected your mental state? No, strange. An event like that would do profound damage to a child of your age. Representative San, if your perception is that the events of my father's death are responsible for me being in, as suggested, bad teacher, which caused Genin Uchiha to defect, then I'm afraid you're sadly mistaken on these parts. Ah, Junin Hitaki, that was not my conclusion at all. I'm simply trying to root out why it is that the only genin of the graduating class of semester 3, 4X, seem to have come from your team. Seeing as this is the first team that you have passed, I find it pertinent to question you on matters that may have affected your personal well-being. If it affected my personal well-being to the point that you are presenting it as such, I would have retired long ago. How can we be sure of that? There would have been a complaint made about my ability to function as a shinobi. We don't need to discuss your conduct as a shinobi, only your conduct as a sensei, which so far shows a poor record. A record which you deem poor, because one of my students attempted to defect, and another of my students prevented that defection. If you're criticizing me for my conduct as a sensei, instilling in one student the desire to defect and gain power, will you be praising me for instilling loyalty into the one who prevented the defection? Shikaku smiled. Damn good work, Kakashi. Nakamoto looked irritated, although his tiny smile was still there. Tsunade smirked briefly. A silence hung over the council before Inoichi Yamanaka stood up. The perception that Kakashi Hatake is an inadequate sensei is false and should be removed from the discussion table. Junin Hatake is an exemplary shinobi, and a fine sensei, with an astounding record. His students are well versed in the arts of ninjutsu, and have repeatedly demonstrated stern loyalty to Konoha, Genin Uchiha included. The reality of this defection is that the curse seal of Orochimaru psychologically manipulated Genin Uchiha into seeking more power. We are aware of its effects, having inside our village another shinobi who possesses such a seal. I move that we request information from Tokubetsu Jun Anko Mitarashi regarding the psychological manipulation. That's not necessary, Junin Yamanaka, Shikaku interrupted as he stood up, allowing a stunned Inoichi to sit down. We are perfectly aware of the actions and effects of the seal. Questioning Mitarashi will give no benefit. It is already clear what the main issue is. We must destroy or remove this seal, or at least mitigate its effects. Shikaku glanced at Tsunade before continuing. A much more useful choice of action regarding this matter would be to question the individuals involved in Genin Uchiha's life. His team, his compatriots, his sensei, and finally Genin Uchiha himself. Until then, I move that this council enter recess. A moment, Junin Commander Nakamoto interrupted. I believe that Junin Yamanaka's point was rather viable. Would it not be suitable to hear the testimony of the only other bearer of the seal? Shikaku didn't even blink. That would seem to be, however, any information given by Tokubetsu Junin Mitarashi, would be pertinent to her situation alone. A single look at both of their seals is enough to confirm that whilst Orochimaru is indeed the creator of both, the seals are different and carry out different purposes. With regards to Tokubetsu Junin Mitarashi, the seal's effects are more trial-based and essentially devised to test its effects on her DNA. With regards to Genin Uchiha, they seem more towards psychological manipulation and impairment. And what evidence do you have of this? Without a pause, Shikaku pulled out a paper from his small stack. This file, showcasing an investigation undertaken by not only Junin Hatake, a fine Fuinjutsu analyst, but by Jiraiya of the Sannin himself, Konoha's premier seals master. Shikaku raised the hand which held the file. In a whir, an Anbu grabbed it and appeared next to Nakamoto, who gracefully plucked the file from the Anbu's hands, only for the Anbu to disappear as swiftly as he appeared. That file, Shikaku continued, is a report of this investigation, with a conclusion written by Jiraiya himself, backing up my statements. Nakamoto was again silenced, but not stopped. Then I agree with your motion to question the individuals in Genin Uchiha's life, as well as the retrieval team, his teammates, and Genin Uchiha himself. We will reconvene when he is healthy enough to question. Until then, I will advise his lordship as to his desires and wishes on this matter. With that, the meeting closed and Kakashi heaved a small sigh of relief, as the members of the council streamed out one by one, talking to themselves about what had just occurred. Inoichi approached Shikaku with a concerned look. I'm never one to question your opinion of things, Shikaku, but what was that for? Shikaku heaved a small sigh. Well, for one, I'm right about the seal. Anko's is different. Secondly, we all know she really doesn't like to talk about it. It would have been cruel to force her to talk about it in front of this council, once again. Like she hasn't already done that countless times. I said that out of concern for her comfort. Inoichi balked. Don't tell me you like her, Shikaku? She's way younger than us, and don't you already have Yoshino? He inquired, trying to hide his mirth, already satisfied with his friend's answer. Shuza barked out a series of laughs while Shikaku sighed in annoyance and offered a brief rebuttal as the infamous trio made their way out of the chambers, no doubt to the nearest sake bar. Tsunade for her part wagged her finger and motioned for Kakashi to follow her. Something's up with the daimyo, she said as they walked along the halls to her office. Why would Nakamoto even bother attending this meeting? There have been countless defections in the past year. Sure, none high in profile as the last scion of the Uchiha clan, but he never attended those. I agree, Kakashi replied. There's more to this than meets the eye. He was serious about implicating me. I don't even know the man enough to know what I could have done to piss him off. Arriving at the door to the Hokage's office, they were met with a concerned Shizune, holding a sleeping Tauntaun. Before she could even utter a peep, Tsunade brushed past her and promptly marched to the back, rummaging inside her drawers and under her table, before cursing and stomping to the drawers at the side, reaching in deep but finding nothing. Shizune. Where's my sake? She barked. I disposed of those bottles, Lady Tsunade, Shizune replied nervously, knowing her master's infamous temper. Oh. And why did you do that? I thought it was necessary for your health and for you to continue your work in a sobriety, Shizune said, making sure to slowly inch away from Tsunade. Get me the largest bottle of sake you can find, because I sure as hell need one now, Tsunade growled, making her poor apprentice eat before she ran out the door to carry out her master's wishes. Sighing as she sat down in her chair, Tsunade rested her head on her intertwined fingers as she stared at Kakashi, the man now tying his retrieved headband around his forehead loosely enough to slip it around his left eye. What do you think he wants? She asks. I have no idea. This is something new. Perhaps we should ask Jiraiya. He's on a mission. Trying to locate Itachi Uchiha and his companion, and to interrogate them as to why they came for Naruto. So, we know they came specifically for Naruto. Yes, Itachi all but confirmed it. Tsunade closed her eyes and lightly slapped her desk with her palms. We're getting off topic. Nakamoto is the main concern here. He's never ever been this rash before. I don't think I've ever seen or heard him say that he'd be reporting something to the daimyo before. No, this would be the first time, Kakashi replied. Although, Nakamoto doesn't seem to have a motive or a desire. All he's asked of the council is to investigate me as a probable cause for Sasuke's defection and to inform the daimyo before a decision is confirmed regarding the outcome. If he wanted Sasuke freed, then all he had to do was to agree to the idea that the seal messed with his mind. But he didn't do that right away. Yes. That's what concerns me as well, Tsunade's eyes narrowed. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, noticing the change in his boss's features. There was a lack of one notable voice. Danzo. Where is he in all of this? Not sure, Kakashi replied, raising his head to stare past his boss and out the office window. I didn't expect him to keep quiet as he did. Tsunade sighed heavily. Whatever, it's best to take our minds off this for now. We have no idea what Nakamoto wants or what he's aiming for. But we are shinobi, and so, we must find out. We'll wait until the Uchiha wakes up. Take some time to recover from your mission, and to ease up on what just happened. And visit your damned students. Dismissed. She stood up and headed for the door. Where are you going, Lady Hokage? Kakashi asks. Hospital, Tsunade said gruffly. To check on our little bundles of joy. What about your sake? No drinking in the hospital, she smiled. Even I have my rules. Despite being covered head to toe in bandages and wraps, Naruto's most important concern was how hungry he was. Ooh, I haven't eaten in days, he said. Well, at least that's what he thought he said. The only thing that came out was a series of muffles. Seeing as his mouth was wrapped as well, it wasn't surprising. Pressing the button to call the nurse again and again and again, but getting no response, he gritted his teeth. He had woken up in some time within the last hour, although he wasn't sure. He was disoriented and everything he saw was fuzzy, barely making out the equipment in the room, as well as the nest of seals tightly wrapped around him. Something he was sure no other patient had. Black symbols written on heavy stone chains, each a kanji for seal, or contain, held in a necklace-like fashion, wrapped around his abdomen and his neck. No doubt because of his furry friend. He felt an odd dull, throbbing pain in his side, wincing as he shifted his casted arms and they rubbed against it. He didn't know what it was, but he couldn't even scratch it. God, he hated hospitals. Naruto didn't have a clue how long he had been in here. He didn't even know what exactly he was in here for. The last thing he could remember was clashing with Sasuke in that canyon north of the village. Sasuke. Oh crap, Sasuke. Where was he? Was Naruto successful? Did he do it? Was Sasuke back in the village? Did he complete his promise to Sakura? Where was Sakura? And why was Naruto so hungry? Naruto angrily smashed the nurse button again and again, trying to get some answers from somebody. Hearing soft voices out the door, he heard shuffling before the handle turned and it opened. In walked a rather annoyed nurse, followed by a tall masked Anbu. What? The nurse spat out. She looked young, with short black hair and a scowl that somehow made her cuter than before. Dressed in a nurse's short skirt uniform, one size too small, Naruto's heart skipped a beat. MMMHHMHMHMHMHKMHMHDHMH, Naruto mumbled out under the bandages. The nurse raised an eyebrow, then leaned forward. Hold on, slowly unwrapping the bandages from Naruto's mouth, ignoring the bright red flush on the young blonde's face as her chest pressed near his face. Dribbled Naruto as his mouth opened, flooding with stale, hospital air. The nurse frowned slightly. Stop pressing that damn button all the time. Once is enough. What do you want? Who am I? The nurse raised both her eyebrows. Walking around the bed, she reached for his chart and scanned its contents quickly. You're Naru. Excuse me, Nurse-san, the stone-cold voice of the Anbu interrupted. This is a shinobi matter, classified and withdrawn from the public accord. I will answer any questions the patient has. Please step outside. The nurse blinked, before smirking. Using her finger to trace the Anbu's mask and down to his muscled chest. You know. I've always wanted a strong, handsome man to sweep me off my feet. Ya know anyone like that? Quick as a flash, the Anbu pushed the nurse backward, before knocking on her feet with such force she twisted on her side midair and caught her princess style. The nurse eeped in shock and joy, before giggling madly, grabbing onto the Anbu's neck. Naruto just looked confused, turning tomato red. What the hell? Were they going to leave him there? All alone? The Anbu walked out of the room, nurse held in his hands, before promptly dropping her right outside, and walking back in. No, I don't know anyone like that. Good luck. Then, he shut the door, locking them inside. The Anbu approached a worried-looking Naruto, not really comfortable being all shackled up and at the mercy of a heavily trained killer. Even though they were on the same side. Relax, the Anbu's cold voice flowed softly. I'm here to protect you. Huh, protect me? From what? Reaching up to his face, the Anbu plucked the red and black striped cat mask from his face, revealing a relatively normal, although tired man under it. My name is Yamato. It's lovely to meet you, Naruto. Yamato's voice without the mask was different to the voice under it. Now, he seemed more normal? If you could use that word? Hey Yamato. Naruto gulped out. How long have I been here? A few hours at best, Yamato replied. You've been unconscious for the whole time you've been here. Your mission was successful, Naruto. Congratulations, Yamato said with a small smile. Why you mean? I did it? Sasuke's back in the village. Naruto stared, eyes wide open, a glimmer appearing in both. He'd actually done it. He'd fulfilled his promise to Sakura. He'd beaten Sasuke. He'd stopped him from betraying the village, himself and his team. He'd proved his own worth.
Yahoo. Naruto leapt up, only to smack his casted arms against the side of his chest, sending a shock of searing pain all across the area, making him collapse in on himself and smacking his head off the seal chains.
OWWWW. What the hell are these for? He asks. The seal chains. Well, for obvious reasons I hope, Yamato said with a small, sad smile. That's actually why I'm here, Naruto, getting a confused look in return. Wah. Would I mean Yamato, getting a smile in return just made Naruto more confused. You see. Yamato started, only to get interrupted when someone tried to open the door, before banging on it impatiently. Yamato yelped weirdly and ran to the door, opening the bolt only to find his boss, the Lady Fifth Hokage herself, staring back in annoyance. Yamato. What the hell do you think you're doing locking these doors? Shouted the last living Senju. Beside her, stood a worried-looking Shizune, and a smirking but blushing nurse. The same one he dumped outside the door moments earlier. Lady Hokage. I was just. You were just what? Out of the way, Tsunade brushed past him, not even giving him a chance to explain. Shizune followed suit, smiling at Yamato before hurriedly joining Tsunade in the room. The nurse sauntered in and gazed at Yamato, face now open for all to see. You're still pretty cute. Nurse Kawamoto, leave us. This is a restricted zone, belted out the fifth Hokage. The nurse eeped, and bowed quickly, before glancing at a softly smiling Yamato and darting out the door. Naruto, weirded out by the proceedings, watched as his favorite blonde Kage grabbed his chart thingy, flicked through the papers, and speed walked to the bottom of his bed, without once taking the time to look at him. What's up, Grandma Hokage? Don't call me that brat, she said with no malice or negativity. She sounded tired and said it like she had to say it. There was no feeling behind it, but before he could say anything, Tsunade interrupted him, quickly snapping the chart shut. You're up. How are you feeling, kid? This time, there was genuine concern in her voice. Beaming, Naruto flashed her a thumbs up, well as good a thumbs up as he could manage with both his arms in casts. I'm feeling great. How's about a B-rank mission? I could do with a warm-up. Tsunade smiled at his brash confidence, while Shizune giggled in the back. Naruto turned to her with the same smile. Hee Shizune. How's it going? Hi, Naruto. It's good to see you're awake, we were so worried. All of us, even Lady Tsunade, even though she won't admit it. Tsunade didn't even bother denying it, as she fiddled with the knobs on the machine that Naruto was attached to. Man. I'm starving. Naruto reached down and grabbed his stomach to further show how hungry he was. When was the last time you ate something? Shizune asked, tapping the side of her left cheek with her finger. Since forever, I think I'm dying, Naruto groaned out with a pained look. I'll get you some food, Naruto, Shizune said helpfully. Some ramen would be great. None of that hospital crap. Whoever designed that menu is the devil. Shizune reached the door and turned around with a smile. Naruto. That menu was made by Lady Tsunade. Naruto's head snapped to the blonde Kage twisting wires and pushing buttons on the machine next to his bed. She didn't seem to react, although she was now pushing the buttons a lot harder than before. Sighing, she turned around and looked at Naruto, tracing the kanji of the seal chains wrapped around him. I think you know why these are on you. Naruto gulped. Yeah. For the fox, right? Suddenly Naruto remembered that they weren't alone, snapping his head in fear towards Yamato, who stood still in the middle of the room. Actually, Naruto. That's the reason Yamato is here. Puzzled, Naruto looked at her confused. Yamato over there, Tsunade sneered rather strangely. Has got the uncanny ability to be able to control a tailed beast, preventing the Jinchuriki from going wild. Yamato smiled sadly whilst nodding. You mean, he's here to stop me from going crazy? But I've never done that. Tsunade sighed, sitting down in the bed beside him. Not yet. During this mission, we felt it, even far from over here. A massive surge of demonic chakra. Our sensors recognized it and confirmed it as the Nine Tails. Tsunade scanned his face, taking in his eyes, full of fear and anxiety. We don't know what happened out there. We had the seal checked when you arrived. Everything seems in order. But Yamato is here as a fail-safe. Yamato walked up to the bed. As I said, I'm here to keep you safe. Tsunade wouldn't even look at Yamato, making Naruto more confused than ever. But all that went out the window when Tsunade took his hand in hers. Naruto. What happened out there? Did you speak with the fox? How did you access its power? She looked genuinely worried, making Naruto more serious. Please, Naruto. This is important. Naruto understood that right away, gulping to clear his throat. Naruto looked at her with pained eyes. Granny, I don't know. I saw Sasuke using that seal thing in its power and I just lost it. Orochimaru killed old man Hokage. And Sasuke was happy to use that evil stuff so easily. And he wasn't using it for a good reason but in order to beat me so he could betray the village. I guess. I mean, I don't know. Did you speak to the fox? No, have you ever spoken to the fox? Yeah, once. Shocked, Tsunade blinked a few times. When? Naruto. When? Tsunade restated, sternly. Be back during the Chunin exams. Pervy Sage made me do it. He said I needed to do it when he made me summon the boss toad. Tsunade leaned back. Pervy? Sage? Boss toad? Jiraiya. She muttered through gritted teeth. When he got back, she was going to give that old fool the beating of a lifetime. Turning to the Anbu standing solemnly near the bed. Dismissed. Yamato bowed quickly. By your word, Lady Hokage. Take care, Naruto, before disappearing in a whirl of leaves. Naruto looked at Tsunade. Hey Granny. Do you like that Anbu? Cause you seem pretty mad at him. He's not a bad guy. Did he mess up or something? Tsunade, putting on a pair of medical latex gloves, didn't look at him. His situation is complicated. She leaned over and pulled back his eyelids, gazing at the whites of his eyes. Say ah, urging him to open his mouth. Naruto revealed a puffy pink tongue, white teeth, and light red gums. Did you brush your teeth this morning? She said with a smirk. You're not gonna get a girl with breath like this. Goo goo gig hug, Naruto replied. After fisking around in his mouth, Tsunade gave him a glass of water to clear up the taste of rubber from the back of his throat. I don't think the pinky from your team would appreciate that. Women like men who can take care of themselves. Before the sputtering Naruto could respond, they were interrupted by a door knock. Tsunade peeled off her gloves and motioned for the person on the other side to enter. In walked Gaara of the Sand, gourd attached to his back, black lines etched around his eyes and a look of pure, demented tiredness? Naruto screamed internally. Aw crap, he wants a rematch. No. No, wait, he was there on the mission with us. Hey Gaara. What are you doing here, haha? Gaara didn't say anything, simply picking up a chair near the door and walking with it, before placing it next to Naruto's bedside and sitting down. Interested by the relationship between the two, but annoyed that a sand shinobi had managed to make it into the restricted area of the hospital, Tsunade glared at Gaara, but gave him a nod of thanks, before announcing that she was going to get Naruto some medication for pain, leaving a poor Naruto to deal with the guy who had almost killed him, but had now developed the weirdest friendship ever with, alone. Gaara's eyes never left Naruto's face, opening his mouth to axe. You are awake. Why yeah, haha, that's me, can't keep Naruto Uzumaki down. Naruto grinned, regaining his confidence. Hey, thanks for your help in the mission, don't think we could have done it without you. Gaara blinked very quickly. That is not true, you are strong. Naruto grinned again. Yeah, but so are you. Two strong ninjas are better than one, don't you think? Gaara didn't react, choosing instead to cast his eyes over Naruto's intricate seal chains. You have these chains. Why, Naruto gulped. There it was. The conversation with Gaara that he had been hoping to avoid. They both knew why these chains were on him, but had never talked about it. Ever since Gaara began to understand that he and Naruto had the same eyes, the same suffering, and were one and the same, Gaara had put much thought into why it was Naruto was like him and he was like Naruto.
His moth Shukaku had screamed at him specifically to kill Naruto. With others, Shukaku would roar generic threats, kill him, crush him, murder him, give me his blood, etc. But with Naruto, Shukaku went absolutely insane. Well, more insane than usual. Demanding that Naruto's bones be torn and shredded, that sand be poured into each one of his orifices, that Gaara do unimaginable things to him.
Gaara was confused. What had this random, rather foolish, and off-putting person done that had so incensed Shukaku so much? There seemed to be no other reason, other than that Naruto was just like him. But, to his knowledge, there were no tailed beasts in the hidden leaf. To get his answer, Gaara wanted to speak to Naruto. But these chains around him seemed to all but confirm his suspicions. You are just like me. You have one within you. Gaara clutched the area around his heart and a pained look emerged on his face. Naruto, who had been staring at him with his mouth slightly open and his eyes a little wider than normal, relaxed. Yeah. I didn't know until recently. But yeah. A small smile came upon his face. But it's never really. Spoken? To me? I think you could put it like that. Breaking out of his stupor, Naruto looked at him with a smile. You know what? This makes us friends, right? I mean, we gotta stick together yawn now. Gaara blinked fast again. I think so. The smallest hint of a smile emerged on his face. Nah. You know what? We're not friends, Naruto exclaimed. And for the briefest moment, time stopped for Gaara of the Sand. Once again, he had been rejected. Once again he was alone. But before he could contemplate this, Naruto grinned at him again. We're brothers. Yeah. More than friends. Gaara's heart skipped a beat. Brothers? He had a brother. But Kankuro never really acted like one, or at least like the brothers Gaara had read about. He didn't know what a brother was supposed to be like. But this boy, no, this young man, sitting in the bed before him, wrapped from head to toe in bandages and seals, sporting an infectious grin, was more than happy to call him one. Naruto, ever smiling, stuck out a clenched fist in the direction of Gaara, who stared at it, not really understanding the reason for its presence, before deciding to take it as a challenge. Maybe this is what brothers did. I accept, before smashing his own clenched fist into Naruto's.
Yowwwww. Naruto jumped back, quickly shaking his sore, red hand and rubbing the knuckles.
Aw man. What was that for? You challenged me as a brother, so I responded. Was this not correct? Heck no. You're supposed to tap it, here, like this. Naruto demonstrated, by making a fist with both hands and tapping them together. I see. I am not familiar with this. Sorry. Gaara uttered slowly to an emotionless Naruto, who stared at him before breaking out in his trademark smile. Hey, don't worry about it. Come on, let's try it again. Sticking his hand out, he watched as a smiling Gaara tapped his fist with his own. Slash 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 slash. The consistent beeping of the life support machine was the only distraction he had, but Shikamaru Nara knew it wasn't the best one. Having been informed earlier that his first mission as a Chunin had been successful, and that no one had died thankfully, Shikamaru felt the weight of the world, which had been so easily slammed on top of him, disappear as quickly as it came. Staring at Kiba Inuzuka's chest going up and down as the machine essentially breathed for him, seeing as he was too weak to take a breath on his own, was scary. For all the years and all the times that Iruka-sensei had drummed the reality of death into their minds during the academy, Shikamaru had never thought it would come to him and people he knew, at least so soon. Thankfully, Kiba wasn't actually dead. But he and Choji and Neji, and Naruto and that prick Sasuke, had all been on the line at some point. It was sheer luck of the draw, that the Sand siblings had been sent after them, that they had someone to back them up. Otherwise, they would have no doubt breathed their last. Neji had been taken out of the ICU in the last hour, having survived his scare. Choji was apparently awake and was demanding food, something that made Shikamaru smile. Kiba was still resting but would pull through and be out and about, annoying people as usual in a week. As for Naruto and Sasuke, Shikamaru didn't know exactly what was going on, but Anbu had arrived almost as soon as they came to the hospital. Taking Sasuke away, he could understand. He was after all a traitor. But Naruto? They wrapped him in chakra chains, and put seals on him, and dragged him to the restricted zone. None of which made sense. Naruto was barely alive as it was. Restricting his chakra would not doubt reduce his chances of survival significantly. The only reason Shikamaru knew they weren't dead was because the Anbu guarding the doorways had told him so. Shuffling in the doorway drew his attention as he stared into the pale eyes of Kiba's teammate, the quiet Hyuga heiress. Hinata tried her best not to look directly at Shikamaru, preferring to focus on the ground and the sides, nervous as always. She held a white plastic packet, laced with ornate red ribbon in her hands. Shikamaru. Shikamaru nodded to her softly, well used to her jittering ways. Hinata walked slowly towards Kiba's bed, lifting her head to drink in the image of her usually happy and boisterous teammate now silent as the grave. Akamaru. They took him to the Shinobi Vet Clinic. Inuzuka vets are looking at him right now. He'll be fine. Hinata looked relieved. How are you? Shikamaru stared at her and shrugged. I'm okay. I got off lucky. Just some scrapes here and there. Hinata reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a glass tub, presenting it to him. F for your cuts. It's a salve. It's good. Shikamaru stared at her again, and slowly took it out of her hands, investigating the silky creamy mixture inside, before giving her a nod of thanks. Have you seen Neji? Hinata trembled a little. Neji is fine thankfully. They're being extra cautious with him. I'm supposed to be waiting outside. I'll go see him later. She blinked a few times before looking down at the ground. They won't let me see him. Naruto. They said he's in the restricted zone. Yeah. Both Naruto and Sasuke. I don't know why, so don't bother asking me. Hinata bowed her head even further. But he's okay. They told me that much. Shikamaru could literally feel the glow of happiness from the Hinata, as her head jutted up to look at him with a smile. He almost laughed. Instead, he groaned as the loud, shrill voice of his other teammate ripped through the air. Shikamaru. Where are you? Ino Yamanaka didn't know how loud she could be, but it felt like she was trying her best to find out. Bursting into the room, she did a double take as she saw the object of her quest, sitting looking as bored as ever, with the princess of the Hyuga clan, shivering like she always did, and Kiba, asleep on the bed. There you are. I was so worried. Why? Just because. Okay. Don't ask stupid questions. Believe me, I'm trying my best not to. What? Nothing. I'm here. What do you want? How are you? Where's Choji? Sensei and I were so worried. Blurting out question after question wasn't exactly as helpful as she thought it would be, as Shikamaru massaged his temples. Turning to Hinata, he motioned for her to take his seat.
I'm going to check on Choji. Keep an eye on Kiba, okay? He didn't have to ask twice, as the small girl nodded and took his place.
Walking out with Ino close by, Shikamaru could feel her eyes blaring a hole in his back. What's wrong now? When were you going to tell me that you made Chunin? I only found out this morning. They gave me the mission right away. TCH. Figures. Only you'd make Chunin out of the rest of us. Ignoring her, Shikamaru adjusted his Chunin vest, pulling it down seeing as it had scooted up from sitting down too long. Hey, is it true? Ino asks, desperation clear in her voice.
Sasuke betrayed the village. Shikamaru chose not to answer her this time as well.
She shouldn't have known that, unless Sakura or their sensei had told her, and seeing as Asuma sensei had only just returned from a mission, Sakura was the only other option. But the pink-haired Kunoichi had been interrogated and held in the T&I department, accused of aiding and abetting Sasuke, as far as Shikamaru knew, and she had been sworn to secrecy as well. She had been released only when they left on the mission. Sighing, he glanced at Ino, seeing as she was now walking beside him as opposed to behind him. Ino, you're not supposed to know that. So it's true, she exclaimed with tears in her eyes. The fact that her childhood crush had turned out to be a bad boy, less in the tall, dark and handsome manner, and more so in the very, very, very bad sense upset her quite a bit. God. That's horrible. Why would he do that? Who knows? Maybe he turned out to be a bad guy. Because he was a bad guy. Shikamaru mused. Ino scowled. It's that seal, the one Orochimaru of the Sannin put on him. Sakura told me all about it. It messed with his mind. Poor Sasuke. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. What the hell else had Sakura told her? Arriving at the high dependency unit, they spotted their rotund teammate munching on some beef, whilst his even more massive father sat on a reinforced chair beside him discussing what appeared to be something of deep importance. It's the stock first, then you add the noodles, otherwise they go all soggy. No way, Dad, you put the noodles first. GMGMGMG, Choji answered back, in between inhaling mouthfuls of beef. In a way, Shikamaru was glad to hear what was pretty much the most boring debate ever, at least that meant Choji was responsive. Choji, Ino shrieked, making Shikamaru wince as she jumped over her weight-challenged teammate. I swear, woman, he thought, that voice of yours is definitely a bloodline, or at least an S-class jutsu on its own. You're all right. Yeah, Ino. Why wouldn't I be? Hey, you got any chips? Shikamaru reached into his Chunin vest and pulled out his emergency supply, tossing it over to his friend, who smiled happily in return. Shikamaru. Don't encourage him. Choji, as soon as you get out of here, we're starting you on a diet. I know this great one I saw in the latest Kunoichi magazine. And with that, Shikamaru took his exit, only to be stopped by a hand on his shoulder. Turning to see the towering figure of Shuza Akamichi, who beamed at him. "Hey Shikamaru, thanks for taking care of him. Ya did good." Shikamaru looked at him intensely. "Did I? I think Choji is a good ninja. I didn't do anything that he himself didn't do."
Shuza smiled. "Now don't bother denying it. Choji told me you almost single-handedly sealed his bleeding and tried to heft him back to the village on your own when the Mednins arrived."
Shikamaru shrugged. "That's what friends are for." Choza's smile grew wider. "You're a true friend, Shikamaru. You have my gratitude. Hopefully, it never comes to it, but I hope Choji can pay you back." With that, he re-entered his son's room, Shikamaru gazing at his retreating figure. With a sigh, he turned around and made his way out of the hospital. He needed to make his report, and so far, had delayed it until confirmation of the safety of his teammates. That all changed when a figure blocked his path. Tall, proud, tanned, and with a giant fan on her back, Tamari of the Sand eyed the boy in front of her, judging him, demanding that he make a move. But that was all Shikamaru could produce. He wasn't scared of her. But her demeanor made him nervous. More than other girls. The fact that it seemed like she was specifically looking for him didn't help. HMMMPH. There you are. I've been looking for you. Uh-oh. That wasn't good news. Come. We have to write a report. Together. Oh, right. Yeah. They walked basically in silence, although Shikamaru noticed that she didn't seem to have made much of walking alongside the man who beat her to Chunin. He felt strangely small. Stop, she interrupted. Stop making a big deal out of this. Congrats on making it to Chunin. It really doesn't matter. You beat me. I don't think it was fair, but you used the surroundings well. As for the invasion, you know the details. A shinobi must do as they are ordered to. I don't blame you for that. Shikamaru added. I just found it awkward that you don't hold a grudge about not being promoted. Well, I don't. That ended that. It seemed she had thicker skin than he had thought. All's well that ends well. Besides, she smiled. I've been promoted myself. What the hell? What was the point in acting like the bigger person then? Shikamaru gritted as he and the bemused sand ninja walked towards the tower. He had woken up a few hours ago, had been double and triple cleared to leave, and had found out that his best friend was waiting for him back home. But what Kiba Inuzuka had been waiting for the most was to scratch his inner left thigh, where the fibers of the wrappings that had surrounded them previously had been causing an intense itch. To reach down there, he had to remove his trousers, and that's when he realized he had made the awful mistake of forgetting to lock the door. He realized this because the door swung open and his sensei walked in, to see him naked, facing away from her, making strange motions as he dealt with the issues near his inner region. What made this worse was that his sensei had spotted the new edition of Dog Lovers magazine, a harmless rag dedicated to showing off your pet dog, teaching them dog tricks, advertising dog food, and how best to walk your dog amongst a range of other niche stuff, something another clan member had left behind. Unfortunately, his sensei decided to pick it up, curious to see the reading material her students engaged with. What made it worse was that this week's edition was a feature of the most beautiful ways to get a female dog to get to mate with your male companion. Kiba, quickly pulling on his trousers, decided to make the best of a bad situation, seeing the morbid look on his sensei's face. You should see the centerfold. There's no way those fangs are real, haha. Kurenai, for her part, tried her best not to look disgusted. Tossing the magazine to the side, she walked towards her student, seeing the changing features in Kiba's face as fear crept upon him. Sensei, I wasn't actually. It was a joke, I swear. I was just. Cut off as his sensei pulled him into a hug. Kiba wasn't confused in the slightest. Kurenai was perhaps the most caring of the Junin sensei that had graced his generation. "Oh, I know that, you idiot." She released him and he saw the worry in her eyes. "Don't scare me like that, Kiba. We thought we'd lost you." Feeling a little bit guilty about his immaturity, Kiba at least had the ability to look bashful. Sorry, Kurenai sensei. I promise not to be part of a super secret mega dangerous retrieval mission of a Rouge ninja ever again." Kurenai gave him a playful smack. "Have you been cleared to go?" "Yeah. A few times. Even Lady Hokage came here. I feel so special, haha. Right now, I just want to go find Akamaru and see how he's doing." "I talked with your mother. Akamaru is fine, just a bit roughed up, but otherwise quite well, thank God." "Great. I'll just get the pain meds and the antibiotics from the pharmacy then head on home." Kiba made his way to the door, before pausing and turning around. "Hey, sensei? What is it, Kiba? Did Hinata and Shino come and visit?" Kurenai smiled. "Hinata was here for a while," she said, taking note of the faint blush on his face, hard to see given his bright red fang marks. And Shino?" Kurenai gestured to the window, where what looked like a small fly was hovering on the outer edge. "Always." Neji Hyuga lay on his bed, tired but fully awake and completely prepared to leave the hospital at once. The doctors disagreed. Lady Tsunade had honored him with her presence after he had woken up and was discharged from the ICU. She had spent a good few minutes testing his movement, his sight, his chakra coils, and his general health, before declaring him fit for active duty, following a mandatory 3-day rest period, something she said she would direct the Hyuga clan to take firm action on, to prevent him from skipping out on. Not that he would. Neji was quite fatigued, he would happily welcome some mandatory rest. It was his insane teammate who refused. Lee was not seriously injured. Bad was hospitalized to make sure that the injuries he had been given in his Chunin exam fight with Gaara of the Sand did not re-emerge and trouble him further. Lee apparently left the hospital vowing, way too loudly, to do 9,000 or whatever sit-downs pushes. Neji grit his teeth in annoyance. What the hell was a sit-down push? What really didn't help was that for the past 5 minutes, he had been staring in reserved annoyance at the figure waiting nervously outside his door. Yes, she, after all, he knew exactly who it was and why she was here, had been pacing back and forth and raising her hand to knock on the door, before dropping it out of nervousness. Seriously. Did she forget he could see through walls and doors? He almost didn't want her to come in, but knew that she would eventually build up the courage, so he waited patiently for his cousin to finally bite her tongue and open the door, which thankfully she had done right at that moment. Staring cautiously at his emotionless face, Hinata Hyuga took a deep breath before taking some timid steps forward. "And Neji?" How quick to interrupt her, Neji blurted out, "Lady Hinata, there is no need for you to have come here. I am doing well and will return home this evening." Hinata bowed her head, disappointed by her cousin's stern rejection of her presence. Neji, on the other hand, quick to end things before they began, finished her off, "Please return home and get some rest." Hinata for her part kept herself together and didn't move an inch. Instead, surprising not just Neji but herself as well, she took 2 steps forward and looked directly at him. Pale light eye to pale light eye. Neji, although he didn't show it, was shocked. This was only the second time in recent memory that his cousin had rebuked him, usually too timid to refuse any of his requests for her to leave him alone. Hinata reached into her pocket and pulled out a small parcel with a red ribbon tied up into a neat little bow. Pausing as she paced about his reaction in her mind, she pushed the parcel into his face.
This is for you. It's some chocolate. I made it."
Neji stared at it silently, before pushing it away. "Lady Hinata, I thank you, but there is no need for this. Please enjoy this yourself." Hinata didn't budge. I made it for you. It's no good if I eat it. Please take it." She pushed it once again towards him. Neji didn't know what to think. There was no point trying to push this to see how far she would go. The poor girl already looked like she was about to pass out. And if he just took the parcel and said his thanks and that he needed to rest, it will be enough to make her go away. With a sigh he accepted it. "Thank you, Lady Hinata. You humble this lowly servant of yours, with your grace and kindness." Hinata bowed her head, obviously hurt at what her cousin had said to her. Of course, Neji knew that reminding them of the gulf in their social status would make her uncomfortable and make her disappear far quicker than when she came. Thank God it succeeded, as Hinata mumbled a few incomprehensible words and walked out slowly, taking care to make as little noise as possible. Neji honestly felt bad. Flipping the white parcel to take a look at it further, Neji noticed the intricate flowery designs dotted across the paper, and the thick white cards sealed within the package contents. Opening it, he plucked out the card which was hidden behind the small white box, and removed the wax seal which held it closed. Neji, thank you for taking care of me. One day I hope to be even half of the ninja that you are. You are an amazing shinobi and will become even greater than you are now, I'm sure. I hope you enjoy these. I do not think they are good, I am sorry. I tried my very best, and if you don't like them you can throw them away. Please be okay now and forever. Hinata, Neji inspected the white box of chocolate, feeling the plastic lining and removing the lid calmly to reveal perfectly shaped and cooked pearls and stars and half moons, all with designs on their own. It was obvious Hinata spent a lot of time on this. Removing one piece, he placed it between his teeth and let his mouth close down on it, slicing through the creamy mixture. That fool, he thought. How could she think that these are not good? These are amazing. The quiet stillness of the hospital strangely unnerved Kakashi, who was typically used to all things deep and dark. The masked Junin watched, sitting idly on the bench, as Anbu and nurses filtered in and out of the room where his wayward student lay, locked under a myriad of seals and chains, and tubes and machines. The last heir of the Uchiha clan, famed for their resilience and haughty nature, looked broken. He had yet to wake up. His legendary eyes, which had at one point made armies of various nations quiver and flee, were now blocked behind a chakra-laced blindfold, with the word, seal, stamped on it. His skull needed a new plate, his ribs would take weeks to restructure, his wounds required repeated sealing and stitches, but apart from what would undoubtedly be the most shattered ego ever, Sasuke was healthy and breathing again. Walking into the room, Kakashi felt the welcome nods of several Anbu, no doubt some new members, keen to show their idol their appreciation. He also felt the displeasure of the nurses, who went out of their way to frown at him, annoyed that yet another masked individual had entered the room, making their already difficult work even harder. Focusing instead on his student, Kakashi made yet another mental note of his status. The same as he has been for the last while. The massive wound to the left side of his body, where a large chunk of flesh and fat and muscle had been torn from the crunched and shattered bone, was now sutured and skin had been taken from his leg to cover it temporarily. The medic ninja had worked through Sasuke's arrival in the later evening, the day after he left, through the first night of his stay, and had only declared their work finished the evening of the second day. Sasuke looked paler than ever, but he was fine. He would be back on active duty in just over a month. A time frame that had blown Kakashi out of the water. But seeing as Tsunade and Shizune had personally dealt with both Naruto and Sasuke's injuries after the council meeting, it made a little sense. Feeling like he couldn't do anything else except get in the way of the medic ninja and the nurses, Kakashi stepped outside, making his way to the other end of the restricted zone, to see his other wayward hyperactive student, pausing to get a drink of water from a dispenser. Kakashi felt an unwelcome presence behind him but didn't need to turn around to recognize the ominous, nauseating arrival of Danzo Shimura. Quiet as the wind, but deadlier than a hurricane, Danzo stepped up to join him at his pace to his right, shoulder to bandage-wrapped shoulder. One-eyed man to one-eyed man. Kakashi felt sick just standing near him. He didn't hate Danzo, but the less he knew about the man, or the less he heard of him, the better. I must say, Hatake, Danzo's left eye cracked open slightly. Your students do cause quite the fuss. Imagine what they're like on the field. Yes, quite so. Do you know where we are? The restricted zone of Konoha Military Hospital No. 4. Indeed. Here bloom the flowers of evil. Ninja who break their oath to the village and are returned to face justice. It is ridiculous that we waste scant resources on traitors, don't you agree? Actually, I think it's because there was no other place to put them. Much more simple explanation, no? Danzo didn't respond. At least not right away. The Lady Hokage's predecessors wisely set aside their compassion. Steeled themselves for what needed to be done. Oh? What's that? Danzo paused before twisting his head to face Kakashi. Whatever needs to be done to protect the village. These foolish games your students play benefit no one. Boys will be boys, I always say. Oh, but not in this case. We both know that these are not just your average run-of-the-mill street urchins. Danzo stopped walking and stalled as if he'd forgotten something. Kakashi took a few more steps before stopping himself, waiting for whatever it was Danzo was inevitably going to say. You are wary of me. You feel as if I'm some danger to your students. I assure you, my sole purpose is to uphold the great tree that is the hidden leaf, to keep its branches high, to keep the leaves happy and plenty. To keep the roots that hold it together strong. Taking note of the obvious reference to Danzo's personal military force, Kakashi replied tersely, I think that's the case with all shinobi, no? Turning around to face Danzo, Kakashi's eyes smiled. I doubt there's anyone on this floor who wishes to do serious harm to the leaf. Danzo gazed at him for a while, and Kakashi gazed back cheerily. Finally, apparently uninterested in further conversation, Danzo turned around and shuffled back down the corridor. Kakashi couldn't resist a parting shot. Raising his voice slightly and gazing at Danzo's slowly retreating figure, he said, the worst thing that can happen to a great tree is when its own roots become rotten. It collapses from within. If Danzo heard it or if it affected him or if he even cared, he didn't seem to show it, simply turning the corner at the far end near Sasuke's room. Kakashi waited a moment before sighing and walking on towards Naruto's room. He had to admit, he found it funny that Naruto's room was on the other side of the same floor of the hospital, kind of poetic, although they probably didn't mean it like that. It was weird how the council in the immediate Anbu leadership had decided to put Naruto in the restricted area, for the simple fact that they felt the fox's seal was breaking. Kakashi knew that Tsunade had sent a missive to Jiraiya, demanding he return home as soon as he could so he could inspect the seal. The seal masters already inside the village had double-checked Naruto's seal multiple times and had found no issues thankfully. Arriving at his student's door, Kakashi gracefully knocked on it a few times before opening it slowly. Spotting a bandaged Naruto inhaling ramen like his life depended on it, for a small moment, Kakashi dreamed that maybe none of this had ever occurred. Naruto was Naruto and had just gotten himself hurt in some training accident, snapping out of it only when his student cheerfully called out to him. Late as ever, sensei. Naruto grinned, oh, sorry. You should have seen the weather this morning, and then there was this missing cat, and then some old lady tripped over the missing cat and then, Kakashi rambled on while Naruto looked at him angrily. You could at least come up with some new excuses. Kakashi stumbled as if mocking injury. Excuses? What should I do? Even my own student doesn't believe me. Tears streamed comically from Kakashi's face as Naruto looked at him, annoyed. Watching his sensei pick himself off the floor as quickly as he had fallen there, Naruto plucked the courage to ask him the question he had been dying to ask him. Kakashi-sensei. Have you seen Sakura? She hasn't come to see me at all. I mean, I think she's busy with Sasuke haha. Naruto asked with pained eyes. Kakashi was expecting something like this but was surprised that Naruto didn't get an answer from anyone else. Naruto, you know you're in the restricted zone of the hospital. Genin like Sakura aren't allowed to enter here. She can't visit you or Sasuke. Naruto bowed his head saddened, but just as quickly shot back up beaming. Kakashi watched as the boy's infectious grin replaced his disappointed face in the blink of an eye. Naruto. How long have you pretended to be happy? He thought to himself. Hey sensei, do you know when I can leave? They're not even letting me take these damn seal chains off. I just want to get back to training as soon as possible. Sometimes I think this is all a big joke to stop me from training so bastard Sasuke can catch up. Naruto said matter-of-factly. Kakashi was quick with his reply. Well, then they'd have to keep you in here for a long time. Sasuke will need it. Naruto blinked. Really? You think I'm better than Sasuke? He said with a smile, not believing who was saying this, shocked but happy that he was getting recognition from his sensei of all people. Of course, after all, you beat him didn't you? He eyes smiled at Naruto, getting the same back from the blonde. To answer your question, Naruto, they're waiting for Lord Jiraiya to return to double-check the seal before they'll let you out. Lady Tsunade asked him to come back as soon as you gem to the hospital. It's been more than a day, so he should be here tomorrow at the least. Pervy Sage? Why does he need to be here? Lord Jiraiya is the Hidden Leaf Village's most knowledgeable seals master. No one here knows more about seals and what they mean than he does. Pausing, Kakashi looked directly at Naruto. Lord Jiraiya was the sensei of the Lord Fourth Hokage. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. The Fourth Hokage. The man who had sealed the fox within him in the first place. Now he understood. Fine. I'll wait till then. Seeing his sensei stand up, Naruto gulped. Kakashi-sensei. If you see Sakura, can you tell her I'm alright? And can you check on her as well? Oh wait. How's Sasuke? Have you seen him? What about the other guys, how are? Slow down, Naruto. His sensei replied with a smile, I'll make sure to catch up with Sakura. Sasuke's fine. He's just asleep at the moment. As is everyone else. Most of them are out and about. Get some rest yourself. Opening the door, he was met with the gigantic figure of the legendary Toad Sage himself, followed by an ever-irritated fifth Hokage, arms crossed. Jiraiya blinked at him before grinning. Well, hey there, little Kakashi. What's up? Marching past him, the legendary Sannin gazed at his bandaged and curious student. Placing his hands at his hips, he smirked. Damn brat. I leave for 5 minutes and you're already up my ass causing trouble. Naruto growled. Screw you, old man. I didn't do anything wrong. Like hell. What's this I hear about you smashing that Uchiha teammate of yours? Jiraiya glared at him before leaning over and smiling. Nice work. That kid always had a stick up his behind. Good thing you ripped it out. I hope they fry him for trying to defect to that damn snake of all people. Naruto looked at him appalled. But Pervy Sage, the seal messed with Sasuke's mind. He wasn't thinking straight. Peeved. Don't make excuses for him, kid. That seal does screw with your mind, but only if you let it. With a snarl, Tsunade interrupted their conversation. Stop it, the both of you. Gesturing to Jiraiya. Get on with it. Jiraiya med with a smile and turned to Naruto, snapping the seal chains and allowing him to relax finally after more than a day of wearing them tightly wrapped against his body. Well, kid, Iria Ally didn't want yours to be the first chest I see naked when I came back, but I guess work comes before joy. Take it off. Naruto smirked. What, no tip? Kakashi raised his eyebrows. Tsunade looked shocked. She turned to Jiraiya, storm clouds gathering over her. Jiraiya gulped, hands raised in self-defense. Princess, I swear. I didn't teach him this. You bastard. You twisted his innocent little mind. She took slow steps towards Jiraiya, who just retreated under her glare. Jiraiya stumbled back, face clouded with fear, but stopped when something caught his eye. Tsunade, noticing that Jiraiya wasn't exactly paying her any attention anymore, stopped her glowering and turned to see what he was looking at. There on the bed, sat a shirtless Naruto Uzumaki, spiral reaper seal intact, half his chest on the left side of his body, from his pecs down near to his hip, looked like it had been ripped and blown away and shoddily put together again. It was a lot yellower and paler than the rest of the skin on his chest and would definitely, without a doubt, leave a very distinctive mark. What the hell? Jiraiya stood up angrily. Who did this? The Uchiha. How? When? He turned to Tsunade with a stern look on his face. You better make sure that little prick pays up. Pervy Sage, stop, Naruto said calmly. Stop. Jiraiya yelped. Look what he did to you. By all means, you should be 6 feet under right now if it wasn't for that fox. He tried to kill you, Naruto. Emphasizing the last word didn't seem to make much difference to Naruto, who simply shook his head with a sad smile. That wasn't Sasuke. That was Orochimaru. But now I've bought Sasuke back and you can fix him, right? You really believe that wasn't him? You really think the seal took control of him? Naruto nodded. Jiraiya sighed. All right then, I can't argue with you on that part. Jiraiya looked at him. Kid, I spent years chasing after my best friend, trying to pull him back from the darkness. But he was so far in it, that he became the darkness. Don't make the same mistake that I did. Naruto stared at him confidently. Don't worry. I won't. Jiraiya sighed. Tell me you at least punched him back, right? Naruto grinned. Oh, don't worry, He's still asleep. Jiraiya smiled before leaning down and taking a look at the individual seal marks on Naruto's chest. Slash 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 slash. Calm down, Tsunade, calm down. How are you telling me to calm down at a time like this? Well, you being angry won't change anything, now would it? Tsunade growled furiously, stomping about in her office, whilst a worried Shizune and a pleading Jiraiya played the audience. The object of her fury, a letter from the daimyo, lay on her table. In fact, it was the only thing on her table, seeing as Tsunade had pretty much swiped everything else off in fury. That sanctimonious bastard Nakamoto actually told him to come here. He actually suggested the daimyo preside over the Uchiha's trial. And so what? What's the worst that could happen here? What, the Uchiha gets off scot-free? Who cares? Naruto seems to think that's a great idea. It's not that Jiraiya. It's Nakamoto, he wants something. He has never, not in the 30 years he's worked as the daimyo's representative to the Leaf, made a complaint. Jiraiya paused. Maybe he's a sexist? Tsunade snarled. Have you ever seen his boss? He's worse than you. Ignoring the protests of, hey. Tsunade took a swig out of a jug of sake, one that Shizune had bought for her, so it's not like she could complain about it. The daimyo will arrive in 2 days' time. This letter was sent to us a day ago, meaning our benevolent master. Tsunade sneered, will grace us with his presence in less than 24 hours. So what? Come on, Tsunade, the daimyo will come and the daimyo will go. And whatever this Nakamoto guy wants, we'll give it to him. Afterward we'll request a change in representative. You're letting this get to you a little too much. You don't understand, Jiraiya, shouted Tsunade, turning around to face her old teammate. Have you ever had a chance to look into Nakamoto's history? I'll give you a quick overview. He supported the idea that we should hand over the real Hiashi Hyuga to the Hidden Cloud, to appease them. He opposed the coronation of Minato Namikaze as the 4th Hokage, claiming he was too wild and desired independence from the throne. The guy has opposed everything that has ever been beneficial for Konoha. Yet he's never made an official complaint against us, so why start now? Tsunade sighed. Jiraiya. She said softly. Did you know? At one point, there was a movement to have Naruto live outside the village, and to educate everyone in the village, man, woman and child about the fox. Jiraiya stood silently through gritted teeth and nodded. He was 4 years old. The civilian council started a petition to have him moved outside the walls of the southern sector, facing the Anbu Academy, where they could watch him a glass bubble. The problem was, some shinobi supported this idea. Nakamoto did as well. Sensei. He refused, of course, but Nakamoto was adamant that Naruto be removed from the village. Before he could make a complaint, Sensei went to the daimyo's palace and pleaded with him. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. So you're saying that this Nakamoto guy doesn't like Naruto? He grinned. Tell him to get in line. There's a long list of people who want to give the brat a good beating or worse, but they'll have to go through us. Besides, this is the trial of the Uchiha, not Naruto. It didn't seem to matter how confidently Jiraiya said this because Tsunade didn't appear happy at all. Jiraiya, I found it weird how involved Nakamoto made himself in this event. So I had Kakashi run some errands to the archives and guess what I found? She pulled out a small grayish-purple folder and from that, she pulled out a yellowed paper, handing it to the toad sage. Jiraiya looked confused. Am I supposed to know what this is? This is just a list of names. Take a look at the date. The 10th of October. Wait. This is a list of people who died during the Nine Tails attack. This is Naruto's birthday. Take a look at the highlighted names at the bottom. Jiraiya scanned the paper again before his eyes rested on 3 names highlighted in red. Koyuki Koyamada, Hiroshi Koyamada, Suzu Koyamada. Looking more confused than ever, Jiraiya turned to her. I'm sorry princess, you've lost me. Who are these people? Are they important? Tsunade had a morbid look on her face. That's Nakamoto's family. Jiraiya looked stunned. But, his family name is Nakamoto, right? Koyuki Koyamada is his ex-wife. The other two are their children. She took custody of them following a messy divorce, Tsunade explained. They had been divorced for nearly 10 years. But Nakamoto had wanted to rekindle their relationship for a long time. Unfortunately, the fox's attack crushed any hope of that. So you're saying that because the fox killed Nakamoto's family, that he wants to take it out on Naruto. But why now? He could have done something a lot earlier than this. It's just one theory among others. The only other way to find out specifically is to ask him directly. There's no way we could do that. Well, you could invite him over to the office. You could wear something nice. Maybe something with lace and... Tsunade didn't even bother to let him finish before flinging him across the room, her legendary temper already at its peak. You idiot. If you're not going to help, then what use are you? Relax princess, Jiraiya stated, rather calmly given what had just happened. I've got the perfect plan. Really? What is it? Pretend you're Nakamoto, Jiraiya said, standing up. I'll be me, in case you were wondering. Tsunade wasn't, rolling her eyes. Hey Nakamoto. What's your secret plan? Tsunade paused. Blinking a few times, she looked confused. That's it? That's your perfect plan? To literally ask him? Yeah, Jiraiya said, shrugging his shoulders. Bound to work, right? I'll pinky promise him that I won't tell you. Tsunade looked disappointed. With tears in her eyes, she turned around to avoid looking at her old comrade. Jiraiya, you have no idea how stressful this has been for me the past few days, and if all you're going to do is mess around, then why don't you just get lost? Jiraiya was horrified and consumed with guilt. He stepped forward to try and make amends. Clasping Tsunade lightly by her shoulders, she shivered at his touch and ripped herself from his grip. Hey, princess. It's going to be okay. I'll find out what he wants. No more messing about. I thought you were letting this get to you. I'll fix it, I promise. I'll find out what this guy is looking for. And I'll make sure he doesn't get it. Tsunade sniffed a little. God, look at me. One of the legendary Sannin, one of the strongest kunoichi ever, the last Senju. All because of one man. Smiling at Jiraiya, she paused as he wiped away her tears, before sitting down. Alright, Jiraiya. I'm assigning you a mission. Discover Nakamoto's true intent, before the daimyo arrives. Dismissed. Jiraiya gave her a curt nod, and flashed a comforting smile, before disappearing in a puff. Tsunade cleared her throat and shuffled through her papers, putting them back on the desk. Looking up at Shizune, she noticed her student smiling very widely, concerning Tsunade a little bit. What are you so happy about? Nothing. In his private mansion, just to the end of the lane which held the old Senju compound, Hiroshi Nakamoto, High Minister of Penance and Virtue in the court of the 16th daimyo, representative of the daimyo of the Land of Fire to the village hidden in the leaves, sat awaiting his private servants to bring him his evening tea. The skies above the leaf village blazed a dark orange with streaks of gray, but his thoughts were not on the vivid imagery that he usually spent time thinking about or writing about, or painting. No, his most striking concern was the courteous knock on his door, 7 minutes before schedule. Unless his servants had made his tea in a heartbeat, this was someone else. And as he did not entertain visitors, the identity of the man behind the door both excited him, yet concerned him. But his worries left him, as his servants entered, bowed and announced the presence of one of the Sannin. Considering the Hokage was forbidden by council law to approach other representatives during recess, and that Orochimaru was not in the village at the time, at least he hoped not, that would leave Jiraiya. He rasped out, without turning. You honor me with your presence, Toad Sage. Has Tsunade reduced you to a common assassin? You think I'm here to kill you? Jiraiya's booming voice reverberated around the room. No. Then has Danzo bought your loyalty? Jiraiya grinned. What a vivid imagination. He walked up to sliding door, where Nakamoto sat on the edge, staring out into the courtyard. The daimyo's representative turned to his side, leaning with his back resting on the sliding door frame, half of his body on the courtyard and half still in the room. He gazed lazily at Jiraiya, who simply gazed back. I must admit, I expected Tsunade to send someone, but my expectation was that they would come much earlier. There are only a few hours left, until the Imperial convoy enters the Leaf. Then the village will enter lockdown until his lordship leaves. They were interrupted by a knock on the door as Nakamoto's servants entered, carrying a jug of brewed tea, with 2 cups instead of 1. Come join me, Jiraiya. The twilight is dazzling. Jiraiya sat down and put his back to the wall and faced Nakamoto, taking the cup that was poured for him. You know, you've pretty much revealed to me that you have a plan of some sort, right? Not exactly the best move. I am not afraid of either you or Tsunade. Besides, I'm quite well informed that you've been snooping through my personal records. Not that I mind much, you must have deduced that there was something going on. Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't, and still don't, give a frosty cold noodle about you. That was Tsunade. I'm just here to make sure her fears aren't realized. Nakamoto took a sip of tea. I understand that you are not now, and have never been a fan of the daimyo. Hiruzen revealed to me that you used to curse my master and his predecessor. A problem with authority. Typical of an unwanted street rat. Jiraiya ignored him. I'm not a fan of getting something just because you were born a certain way. It's my belief that you earn your way to the top, that's why the position of Hokage has my ultimate respect. Will you bow to my master when he arrives? I bow to no man. Indeed, you bow to a woman. Is your problem with Tsunade based on her gender? I can assure you, there are things about women that would amaze you. I can show you if you'd like, said Jiraiya with a bit of mirth in his voice. Nakamoto ignored him, taking another sip. Why are you here, Jiraiya? I'm here to honor Koyuki, and to honor Hiroshi and Suzu. Nakamoto slammed his cup and growled. Careful, Sanin. Or your end will be a most tragic and ungallant one. Sometimes, the hero dies in the end. Jiraiya didn't even blink. What is it you plan, Nakamoto? What are you hiding? Is your interest in this case the Sharingan? Nakamoto refilled his cup and sighed. Do you know, Jiraiya, the Imperial Guardians have threatened to resign? I honestly couldn't care less about your office politics. Do you care why? Nope. Jiraiya grinned. I'm a shinobi, not a secretary. I punch people, not papers. I crunch jaws, not numbers, They did it because they want to do away with the concept of a daimyo, Nakamoto interrupted. They haven't said what it is they wish to replace it with, but they are adamant that the system of the daimyo and his attributions are removed. All power to them, I say, indeed. That is, of course, sedition, treason, betrayal, and a failure of our standards in the Academy of Imperial Guards. Is his losership aware of this? Jiraiya started absent-mindedly tapping the floor beside him. The daimyo has not been informed on these matters. Well, that's weird, Jiraiya smirked. Aren't you his advisor? Why don't you, I dunno, advise him on this? Because he would agree with them. Jiraiya stopped tapping. Huh? Why would he agree to get rid of his status and his position? His lordship is under the impression that the concept of a daimyo is. Nakamoto took a sip as if preparing himself for what he was about to say. Boring. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Boring? He thinks having nice supreme power is boring?
In a sense, yes. He is tired of politics. He is tired of having to meet dignitaries.
He was under the impression that the daimyo could simply, as he put it, do whatever he wants. Nakamoto shivered. That is not true. Nakamoto's voice took a deep, patriotic turn, full of vigor and belief. The daimyo is a man ordained by God to rule over a people, maintain civilization, protect society from degeneration, install and protect tradition, uphold the ancestors. The daimyo is not a man who spends his idle days with whores or drink, or in the gardens lounging. Nakamoto ended his rant with disgust. Jiraiya watched with tepid confusion. You're mad that he's living a little? What bothers me, Jiraiya, is that a system which our ancestors have maintained and protected for generations upon generations, a system for which blood was shed, a system for which my father and his father before him laid down their lives with pride, knowing that I would be there to carry forward these ideals, will dissolve because of the whims of a playboy and his hedonism. Jiraiya gazed deeply into Nakamoto's eyes, seeing the humid emotion within. But, if the daimyo is ordained by God, then surely God is calling for his downfall here? Nakamoto growled. That is why God ordained advisors, because one man is not fit to rule based off his own mind alone. Nakamoto took a quick sip, slamming his cup again, before staring out into the twilight. Do you know, Jiraiya, that the daimyos of the cloud, the grass, the stone, and the water, have repeatedly been meeting for these past few months. So? All they do is meet and sign papers. They have been meeting to consider an alliance against the Land of Fire. Now Jiraiya was serious. What evidence do you have of this? My spy network hasn't picked up anything remotely like this. No, because your spy network is focused on something else. That group who hunts for the ones in possession of the tailed beasts. Jiraiya grit his teeth. Nakamoto wasn't supposed to know about that. Nakamoto snorted, upon seeing Jiraiya's face. What, did you believe there was something you could keep from me? There is little that can fall into that bracket, Sanin. Once I am of the mind to know it. He poured more tea.
Besides, Nakamoto took a sip. As you said, all daimyos do is sign treaties and negotiate, so why would your spy network take notice of that?
How did you find out? I have my ways, such as spies in the royal courts. Jiraiya grinned. Dangerous games, we play. Are you taking into account the danger this village is in? We are about to be met with a force on all fronts, by two separate entities. Your mysterious group, and the forces of the other villages. Why not report this to Tsunade immediately? The Leaf is the preeminent military force in this land, we should have been made aware of it. That was the plan, but recent events have made me favor a slightly more radical alternative. That being, that student of yours, Uzumaki, he possesses the nine-tailed demon fox. Jiraiya was silent. But he knew what was coming. The villages fear the beast, they know the destruction it rained down upon you. They would be less interested in confrontation if they were aware that Konoha had utilized its power. Further, your group, they would be less inclined to possess Uzumaki if they knew he was capable of leveling a great village on his own. Jiraiya growled. No way. Absolutely no way. He stood up and grabbed his cup, which hadn't been touched this whole time, tossing the tea out into the garden, and stomping towards the door. You will not touch him. You will not lay one finger on him. I did not even say what I had in mind. Whatever it is, you're not gonna get it. Tsunade will forbid it. She may, but Daimyo will not. And then, the pieces fell into place for Jiraiya.
That's why the daimyo is here. You couldn't care less about the Uchiha. You just need the daimyo here to give the final say on what happens to Naruto. That's why you were so eager to agree on having Naruto give testimony for the Uchiha. If Naruto is giving testimony, you can question him. Then you can talk about Naruto being possessed by the fox and using that to turn him into a weapon, get the daimyo to seal the deal and we can't argue it.
Nakamoto stood up. And with a weapon like that, we could prevent the destruction of this land, this village, these people. He gestured in a sweeping motion outside. And your student could protect himself against those who seek him. Can't you see, Jiraiya? This is the best for everyone. And what about Naruto? Does he have a say in all this? My dear Jiraiya. That boy lost that right the night he was born. You know this. I know this. But I think most importantly, he knows this. Jiraiya cast his eyes down, refusing to meet Nakamoto's piercing gaze. If you're looking for someone to blame Jiraiya, blame your other student. It was he who sealed the demon into Uzumaki. I always disliked Namikaze. He did not possess royal blood, yet he desecrated the court with his filthy footsteps, swaggered in front of the Lord 16th Daimyo, spat upon tradition, and refused to bow to his superiors, Nakamoto sneered. Jiraiya turned around, slowly reaching for the door, pausing only when Nakamoto called out to him. Jiraiya. Search your heart. You know this to be the best decision. Nakamoto glared at Jiraiya's imposing back, and watched as he opened the sliding door and walked out without a word. With a sneer, Nakamoto whispered to no one in particular, "Run to your mistress, little street rat." Sighing, as he sat back down to his original position in the doorframe, pouring himself another cup of tea, and returning to his traditional pastime of watching the sun sink into the earth. Truly, the night is blessed. Naruto was not happy. Despite being cleared not just by Tsunade, but by Shizune, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and half the damn hospital, he still wasn't being allowed to leave. The excuse this time was some guy was coming to the village and the entire village was being put under lockdown. Naruto had absolutely no idea who this guy was, but he didn't care. He hadn't had Ichiraku ramen in years as far as he was concerned. He hadn't visited his apartment and slept in his own bed, which just seemed warmer and softer from what he remembered. He wanted to train and feel the sun on his face. He wanted to smile and joke around with his team, with his friends. Whoever this guy was, he better be worth it. Pacing around in his room, Naruto put on his now fresh and clean blue undershirt and topped it off with his trademark orange jumpsuit, clean and dry. Popping on a brand new pair of standard-use blue ninja sandals, apparently a gift from Kakashi, he stared at himself in the mirror. Blonde hair flopped over his face. Damn, he needed a cut. But at least his foxy grin was the same. And had he grown taller? About damn time. He hated being called shorty, or shrimp, or all those other things that made references to his height like, oh hey Naruto, you don't measure up to Sasuke, or, hey Naruto, give up, Sasuke dwarfs you. Well, screw them, he just knocked the bastard down a peg or two. Wait, hold on, he didn't look right. There was something missing. Something he desperately needed. Something he had risked his life for time and time again. Searching frantically in the small box that the nurse told him contained the belongings he had come into the hospital with, he found it under the ruined orange jacket that he had on during the fight. A headband worn by ninja of the hidden leaf. Wrapping it around his forehead, and tightening it behind his head, Naruto smiled. Oh yeah. He was back in action. Broken from his posing routine by the fact that his door burst open and his gigantic perverted teacher marched in, taking one look at him and grabbing him by the scruff of his neck. We need to talk. Now. Not even giving him the time to respond, Jiraiya essentially dragged him along the corridor, while a struggling Naruto pulled at his collar to stop himself from choking. Cough asterisk. Stop cough cough damn it pervy sage. Let go of me. No time. I can't cough breathe. Whoops, sorry, Jiraiya grinned sheepishly. Letting him go and watching Naruto catch his breath, only to be met with an angry-looking blonde. What's the rush? They're not letting me out of here anyway. Not if I'm with you. Come on, we got an appointment with the Hokage. I'm done with appointments. I just got out of the damn hospital after all. The old hag checked me out plenty here. Oh, you should have been around way back when. You'd have killed to be checked out by her, hee hee. Seeing as his mentor was back to his old perverted ways, Naruto readjusted his jumper and scowled. What does she want anyway? I'm busy. Busy. You. Doing what? Getting ready for my victory parade. Naruto grinned. Jiraiya looked at him softly, and for a second, Naruto noted a sense of sorrow deep within Jiraiya. Something tugged at his senses, screamed at him, but he ignored it. Better take a rain check on that. We've got big trouble, kid. It's not good. Huh? What's wrong? More enemies. Sasuke run away again. No problem, I'll just beat him harder this time. Nothing like that, it's way worse. We'll talk in Tsunade's office. And with that, Jiraiya grabbed him in a bear hug and leapt off the third-floor window, hitting the trees, before landing on a roof and then another, hopping his way across the village at breakneck speed, before landing with a solid thud on the broad window sill of the Hokage Tower. Jiraiya dropped him on the sill and knocked on the window, a lot faster than Naruto remembered he used to. The window opened and he was pushed inside, getting up to see that Tsunade, Shizune, Kakashi-sensei, Shikamaru, who looked like he had aged 20 years and somehow gotten a few new scars, and Asuma Sarutobi were all seemingly waiting around. Locking the window behind him, Jiraiya sighed and, using a hand seal, activated glowing seals, which lit up across the room. Tsunade, who was standing in the middle of the room, took one long soft look at Naruto before sitting down and clearing her throat. Sorry to skip the greetings, this is serious. Let's get right into it. What you hear in this office is a level 5 village class secret. None are to hear it, and you are not to hint at it or write it down or speak of it to anyone, even those who are here. Is that understood? Naruto, massaging his rump from when he landed on the floor, chose to speak up. Grandma Tsunade, what's wrong? Is everything all right? Tsunade looked at him and sighed. Naruto, what did I just say? Skip the pleasantries, don't talk unless you're spoken to. Please, she said softly, worry drowning her eyes. Naruto gulped. She was serious. Tsunade took a sip of water before continuing. We don't have much time. The daimyo has arrived. He's waiting in the imperial quarters of the Hokage monument. Unfortunately for us, we don't have much time to formulate a defense for the situation we are being put in.
The daimyo wants to go home as soon as possible. This means that Sasuke Uchiha's trial is in less than an hour. This village is henceforth under lockdown. which means we cannot travel outside of our homes, per protocol. This order must be obeyed by civilians, and Genin and Chunin rank ninja. Junin and above are permitted limited travel. The reason we're here is to discuss what Jiraiya discovered last night.
Looking at her audience and seeing confused yet concerned looks, she continued slowly. Last night, Jiraiya talked with Hiroshi Nakamoto, the representative of the daimyo to the village council. We wanted to find out why it is he had taken such an interest in this case. We wanted to find out why it was he had informed and complained to the daimyo, despite having never done that in his previous 30 years here. We wanted to know why Danzo Shimura stayed quiet during the council's initial appraisal of events. Unfortunately, we found out. Taking a deep breath and steeling herself, Tsunade finished her statement. Nakamoto advocated for getting witness statements from Sasuke Uchiha's friends and teachers, in order to prove that he didn't act on his own and that the seal manipulated him. Naruto chose this moment to speak up again. But Grandma Tsunade, we want that right? Naruto, how many times? Tsunade angrily rose up from her seat, but upon seeing the blonde's fearful face, sat down and sighed. Naruto, what this means is that you will have to give testimony to the council and the daimyo on Sasuke's behavior before and after the seal. Seeing the confused look, Tsunade continued, knowing what she said next would hurt him. But Nakamoto doesn't want you to give testimony based on Sasuke. He wants to trap you and convince the court that you cannot control the nine-tailed fox. Then he will. He will ask the daimyo to give him permission to make you into a superweapon for the daimyo and Konoha's personal use. How? We don't know. We only know that that's what he plans to do. A morbid silence descended the room, while Naruto bowed his head and started shivering, his eyes wide open in shock. The whole room waited with bated breath to see his response. Every second felt like an eternity as Naruto raised his head slowly and opened his mouth. Wah. The room fell silent again, as the blonde in question contemplated the mess his furry prisoner had pushed him into this time. No. No no no. No. No way. Again, silence fell on the room. The others too uncomfortable to speak. You wouldn't let them do that, would you? Naruto looked painfully with tears in his eyes at a depressed-looking Tsunade. Unfortunately, Naruto, if Nakamoto questions you on this, and you answer the way he wants you to answer, and the daimyo agrees, there's nothing I can do. She sounded exasperated. Lifeless, as if everything had been drained from her.
Why? Why would they do that? What gives them the right? Naruto underwent a swift transformation, from sad to angry in the space of a second. I won't let them. Definitely not. I will not allow them to do that. I am my own damn person. He growled, taking a look at the people in the room.
What the hell is Shikamaru doing here? I thought all this fox crap was supposed to be top secret. Blinking, Shikamaru gave him a deft stare. I'm not Shikamaru, that's my son. Tsunade spoke up. Naruto, this is Shikaku Nara, Junin commander. One of my most loyal and trusted men. I've let him in on this because I need his advice on how best to handle it. Even though him being here is a violation of the council's law on contact with representatives during a time of recess, but I've...
Who gives a damn about the rules? It's not like we've ever kept to them fully. I mean, come the frick on. We're ninja, we're not supposed to follow rules. Naruto burst out.
Naruto, calm down. Kakashi placed a hand on his student's shoulder, only to be met with a fearful drawback from Naruto. Calm down. Calm down. How can I be calm? Naruto began breathing heavily, his eyes darting around the room. But what about my dream? He asked softly. Can I still be Hokage? Naruto. Jiraiya began, it's best to focus on the issues at hand. Burn that bridge when you get there. Naruto seemed to ignore him, eyes darting back and forth, breathing hard and sweating. The occupants of the room stood up and stared at each other, concerned for the blonde's status. Asuma spoke up. I'm here because I used to be an imperial guard in the fire temple. Not really related to the daimyo, but we know from what Lord Jiraiya said, that Nakamoto's got a hard-on for tradition. Tsunade took that as her cue to speak up again. Jiraiya and Kakashi will vouch for your behavior. Jiraiya in terms of the seal being perfect, and Kakashi in terms of your behavior as a student. Asuma will also act as a character witness, using his ties to the temple to keep Nakamoto grounded. Nakamoto might have the ear of the daimyo at all times, but if we catch the daimyo's attention here, we may be able to convince him otherwise. That's the plan Shikaku has come up with, and it's the plan I'm going with. As if by some divine intervention, the door to the office knocked and Jiraiya released the seals. In walked a finely dressed man, adorned in layer upon layer of intricate silk, his head held uncomfortably high, clearing his throat, he bowed ceremoniously. My Lady Hokage, Tsunade Senju, of the time-honored Senju clan, it is my esteemed honor to stand before you in this most hallowed of offices, in this most meritorious of villages. It is also my honor, desire, and duty to announce to you that His Imperial Grand Majesty, the 17th Daimyo of the Land of Fire, protector and maintainer of the land, tamer of fires of Kaushi, master of the flames, and enchanter of wills, Shinpachi Tokugawa, demands your presence in the Grand Hall of Inquisitors, for the trial of Sasuke Uchiha, Genin, for the crime of defection and dereliction of duty. Without awaiting a response, the man waltzed right out of the room, leaving a fragrance of freshly cut roses in his path. Tsunade looked shocked. Oh hell, I thought we had time? Her head snapped towards a worried-looking Shikaku. I guess Nakamoto advised speeding it up, considering the daimyo sped it up already, he might have done it again. Cursing, Tsunade yelled as she ran to her closet and plucked a fine, ceremonial dress from a hanger, quickly unwrapping the sashes. Glancing at the people around her, who looked like they were waiting for a command, Tsunade frowned. What the hell are you waiting for? Get down there. I need to change. Out. Glaring at Jiraiya when barking out the last word. Asuma and Shikaku vanished, while Jiraiya walked to the door on unsteady legs, deep in thought. Kakashi turned and bent over to his most surprising student, who had his face covered in the shadows of his blonde hair. Ruffling his hand in his sensei's son's mane, Kakashi I smiled for comfort. It will be all right, Naruto. Trust me. Naruto looked up to his sensei, the man who he trusted most amongst others. Can ya promise me that, sensei? Will it really? Kakashi didn't answer, and that was enough for him to know how he felt. Slash dash 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 slash. Naruto's slow march to the Grand Inquisitor's Hall was peppered with Jiraiya telling him random stuff like, "Don't lose your cool," and "Bow to the daimyo," and "Don't shout at anyone, oh god. Please don't shout at anyone," and "Could you please wear something other than that ridiculous orange garbage," and other crap that Naruto really wasn't interested in. Super weapon? What did that even mean? A weapon that was super. Wasn't he already a weapon? He was a bona fide well-oiled murder machine. He could kill civilians by the boatload. He wasn't the smartest ninja, Naruto knew that, and he wasn't the fastest, and definitely not the most intense, or maybe not the one with the most heart, and maybe not the coolest, or the one with the most missions completed, or with the most charm or skill or, hold on, now he was beginning to insult himself. What was wrong with him? He was so deep in thought, that he didn't notice when they arrived at the Grand Hall. Naruto only spotted it when he saw the row of pristine samurai in a perfect row out of the corner of his eye. All coated in a deep maroon, purple-red, like an aged wine. Both helmet and headband emblazoned with the kanji for fire, and of course, katana at least 1.5 meters long. These men in armor lined the hall on both sides, including 2 on each side of the massive doors towards the end on the right. Naruto couldn't see inside the doors, seeing as 1, they were closed, and 2, they weren't in front of him, but far to the end to the right as he walked towards them, but he knew the faces in the crowd outside. There was Kiba, along with Akamaru, smiling and happily yelping. Ino, blonde and loud as ever. Shikamaru, the real one this time, wearing that damn Chunin vest and looking as bored and tired as he always did. There was Neji, massaging his temples and blinking as if something bothered him. Rock Lee, who, for some weird reason, was quiet but looked constipated. There was a quiet girl sitting on the corner bench, fiddling with her thumbs, sometimes sighing and looking at the crowd. Naruto noted that she kept a bit away from others. He knew who this was. He just couldn't put his finger Hinata. It was Hinata Hyuga. That weird, but nice, girl, who he didn't have a bad word to say about. Then again, he didn't have much to say about her in the first place. Hinata kept her head low and tried to make herself as small as possible. She was unnoticed and unbothered by the others. God, what Naruto wouldn't give to swap places with her right now. Ah, what the hell? Did he seriously think that? What kind of bastard was he? Dreaming about putting his suffering on others? How could he live with himself? If he didn't want to put the pain of his life on himself, who else was he to put it on? That was an easy choice. He'd rather suffer all of it than let even one drop be given to another. Cursing himself, Naruto made a mental note to apologize to Hinata when he had the chance. Each was dressed in more formal clothing, perhaps in response to the formal requirements for meeting the daimyo. Hinata in light purple dress with a sash, Neji in pure white. Lee had on a pair of silk metal green trousers and a silk metal green top with wide sleeves in a traditional Chinese sense. Even the buttons were a deep forest metal green. Ino had a dark purple dress with a violet sash. Shikamaru had brown dress with a black sash. Kiba wore everything dark and gray, except he had his usual black jumper with a hood on. Naruto, still wearing his orange jumpsuit, felt out of place, but then again, that was how he usually felt. Oh, and she was there too. And for a minute, Naruto forgot about everything that had happened in the past few days. Her hair was still pink as ever, long and softly brushed. Her forehead, not as big as people made it out to be, was still kissable and pale, and with a hint of color that had returned since he had last seen her. Her soft lips, a lighter pink than her hair, were as moist as they always looked. But her eyes, green as an endless sea of grass, that's what Naruto lost himself in. Sakura Haruno looked as beautiful as the day he had first seen her. And as beautiful as the day he had lost her, crying at the village gates. Oh, and she saw him too. Oh wow, she was now walking up to him. Oh heck, the others had noticed him as well. For Naruto, time stood still. He tried to keep eye contact with Sakura as she walked towards him, but if his eyes met hers for longer than 1 second, they would dart to the other side, desperate for some distraction. Too late though, because now she stood in front of him. Weird, he thought. I'm the same size as her, maybe taller. That's new. They blinked at each other in the hall and all those within, living and non-living, stood still. Then Sakura smiled and for Naruto, everything was good. She smiled and opened her arms and nearly crashed into him as she drew him in for a tearful hug. Naruto. Oh. Naruto, you're okay. Sniff, I was so worried. They wouldn't let me see you or Sasuke. I didn't know what to do. I just feel so useless. I just asked and asked about how you were and they wouldn't tell me much. And now they've got me giving testimony on Sasuke. Oh, this is all too sudden. How is he? Have you seen Sasuke? And then Naruto toned her out. That she'd even thought about him for a brief moment was enough. That it took her less than 5 seconds to start rambling on about Sasuke made him a tad bit queasy, but he should have expected it. Hey, Naruto! Shouted Kiba with a wide grin, hands tucked into his pockets, approaching him with Akamaru resting on top of his hooded head, the fluffy white dog giving a yelp for a greeting. You're alright. They drag you in for this witness thing too? Ya Naruto. Truly. Your star shines bright. Your health is in perfect condition. How happy I am to see that. Lee said, Wellmore yelled, before stomping over to Neji, whose eyes widened and then narrowed out of frustration, when he saw his strange teammate yell for him. I don't know why I'm here. None of us actually witnessed Sasuke leave. That was just Sakura, Ino said, with a pinch of envy. We're supposed to be character witnesses. Talk about Sasuke as a person. Shikamaru sighed out. Really? Eek. That's gonna so cringe. My dad's on this council thing. I don't want to tell him how I see Sasuke. Ino said, trying to hide her blushing cheeks with both hands, and failing. Miserably. Kiba snarled. Screw that traitor. If it was up to me, I'd have him spayed, he said with a hint of amusement, only for Ino to launch herself at him, bickering about how Kiba is so cruel. Sakura turned to Naruto. Sasuke, they're not going to punish him too harshly, right? Naruto didn't know how to answer her, so he just shrugged his shoulders. Dunno Sakura. Let's see. Sakura was taken aback. Naruto. Do you want them to punish him? I'm sorry if he hurt you in your fight. But this is Sasuke. This is our teammate. The seal messed with his mind. Our Sasuke would never do that. We should want him to get fixed, not punished. Naruto stared at her and whispered slowly, his voice was raspy, tired, and empty. Sakura. It's not Sasuke I'm worried about. Sakura blinked. What do you mean? Naruto shook his head rapidly before giving her a wide grin, his voice returning to normal. Don't worry Sakura, it'll be alright. I promise. That was enough to satiate Sakura as she smiled and cheered up like she'd been given a dose of happiness. She went over to Ino to hassle with her over Kiba's earlier statement, the Inuzuka heir adamantly refusing to take back his earlier claim of calling Sasuke a traitor. Like hell. Get over yourselves. He left the village to team up with Orochimaru. Sounds like a traitor to me. The guy tried to kill us, he almost killed Naruto, he knocked you cold on your ass Sakura. Can't you get that into your head that he doesn't like you? Kiba. You're not Sasuke's teammate, you didn't know him well enough to know that he'd never do something like that willingly. The seal, it messed with him, it changed him. We can't punish him for something he didn't do when he was thinking straight. Sakura said, her voice rising as she poured emotion into her defense of the man she confessed to a few days prior, but hadn't seen since. Naruto watched them go back and forth with sadness in his eyes, mind still clouded over what Tsunade had revealed to him 20 minutes ago. He almost failed to notice the soft tugging on his sleeve, or the lullaby-like voice calmly saying his name over and over again. His eyes snapped up and almost missed the culprit seeing as how short she was. Oh. Hinata, hey. His eyes lit up. Good to see ya. What's up? Hinata smiled softly at him, finding it amazing she could stand near him for so long without fainting as she was prone to do. She chalked it down to the confidence training from Kurenai-sensei. Hello. How are you feeling? I'm good. All better now. Naruto grinned while flexing his right arm, and grabbing his bicep with his left in a mock show of strength. Hinata smiled then lost her smile as her head lowered. I tried to see you, but they wouldn't let me in. I'm sorry. Naruto dropped his grin in surprise. Hinata had tried to see him of all people? The grin came back, more genuine than it usually had. Yeah, they had me in a top secret area, for super ninja only haha. Thank you. Really? Oh and Hinata. I'm sorry. The Hyuga heiress, smiling at his cheery nature and humor, looked confused. Sorry. For what Naruto? Just sorry I guess haha. He really didn't want to explain to her that he'd had thoughts about wanting to make her live his painful life. Luckily he didn't have to, as their respective senseis and two random chunin stepped in front of them to break up the conversations that were happening between the young ninja. From Kiba's increasingly loud argument with Ino and Sakura, to Naruto and Hinata's little talk, to Shikamaru trying his best to ignore Neji's cold looks to Rock Lee, who had taken to doing handstand push-ups. Alright guys, you're up, Asuma said with the calm demeanor he had always lived by. Yahoo! My students, know this. Your stars are the finest I have seen to have lit up this beautiful spring, yelled Gai-sensei. Or at least that's what Naruto thought said. He kinda skimmed over him. Before you guys head on in, remember this, you'll be made to give an oath of secrecy and an oath of truthfulness. Just answer whatever questions they have for you as effectively as you can. Don't leave anything out. And remember, you guys are shinobi of the leaf, show Lady Tsunade and the daimyo the ultimate respect, alright? Kurenai said, making sure she locked eye contact with Kiba for the last part, getting a thumbs up and a grin in return. No sweat sensei, I'm a gentleman for today, Kiba said, getting a grateful smile from his teacher. He grinned. Tonight on the other hand ha ha ha. Asuma looked at Kurenai, clutching his chest, feigning heartbreak. Gasped Kurenai, how could you? Your own student. Gotta admit Kurenai. I never took you for that kind of person. Kakashi added his own 2 cents. Kurenai glared at both, then flicked Kiba on his forehead. One of the chunin stepped up, flicking through a clipboard full of paper. Your presence is needed. You were required to hand in your headbands one by one as you were called in. However, as you were asked to give character testimony, and as requested by His Lordship the Daimyo, you will instead appear at once together. You will stand at the appropriate places in a row, in the center of the hall, facing the pulpits where His Lordship is seated. When you are called to question, step forward. Do not speak unless asked to. Answer all questions. The right to prevent yourself from personal incrimination is suspended for the duration of this trial. One by one, the young ninja took off their headbands as they prepared themselves mentally for the trial. Hinata handed hers to him with a polite and long bow, Ino with a curt nod and a confident sway, Neji without any emotion whatsoever, Lee with a speech about how youthful the Chunin was, getting a confused look in return. Sakura gave him hers with a smile and a short bow. Shikamaru just gave it to him. Kiba threw it into the Chunin's grasp and Naruto. Well, Naruto didn't give it to him. He'd taken it off and was now running his thumbs across the metal sheath, and his fingers across the fabric, feeling the grooves of the leaf symbol, etched into the steel, and the curve of the band, designed to fit across his forehead, the spots where the screws were twisted in the four corners. This meant something to him. He had fought hard for this. He had spent nights training hard just to win this. He'd trained so hard he had ruined several pairs of clothes, he had broken bones, torn skin, got so many cuts that he was effectively covered in plasters at one point. This was important to him, but he had a funny feeling that if he gave it to this Chunin, it would be difficult for him to get it back. Kakashi noticed his student's reluctance, knowing that he was not feeling the best given the world-breaking news he had received earlier. But Kakashi also knew that it was important for Naruto to face this. That it was necessary for him to understand why people wanted to hurt him, why they wanted to use him. That he needed to be able to speak for himself. Naruto, give him your headband. Yeah kid, I need your headband. The Chunin spoke up, annoyed by this last boy's delay. Kiss my ass. This is my headband, get your own, Naruto said, sticking his tongue out for added flavor. The ninja, shocked by such random insolence, angrily pointed to his own headband. Hey brat, ya see this? Means I already got one. I don't need your smelly headband. Kakashi put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto, it's alright. Give him your headband. Naruto looked at his sensei with a look of defeat and pain. Kakashi could feel the desperation. He wished he could do something about this. Maybe if Naruto faked a sickness. But nothing would work. Kakashi knew it would delay the inevitable. And so, with a heavy heart, Kakashi nodded to his blonde student. With a solemn vow to grab a hold of it soon, and to wear it proudly on his forehead once again, Naruto took a deep breath and handed it over to the Chunin, who took it with grumble of displeasure. His associate, the other Chunin, scanned his clipboard a few more times, before a samurai walked over and whispered into his ear. Ah yes, thank you. Okay guys, let's go. He gestured to the doors, to which the samurai who had whispered in his ear approached, standing with his face an inch from the white wood. He clenched his hand and banged on the door with the bottom, meaty slab of his fist as if it was a hammer, before yelling thunderously, "Behold, witnesses approach, we seek permission to enter." Following a brief pause, a shout of "Enter!" from the inside made the samurai nod as he stood back from the door, which had begun to open slowly from both halves, pulled by intricate green string by two other samurai inside the hall. The blinding yellow light of the hall, reflected off its marble white interior, shone in the eyes of the young ninja who walked in. They marched in formation until they reached the center, where a samurai gestured for them to stop. Naruto didn't know how they lined up, but he knew that Ino was to his immediate left, followed by a weirdly disappointed-looking Hinata, and Kiba to his right, followed by no one, because he was at the end. Naruto had kept his head low, refusing to look up. He glanced to the left side of the hall, noticing the green and purple garb of his mentor Jiraiya. His other sensei Kakashi had taken his place beside him. Samurai guards stood 2 meters apart along the walls, 4 stood at the door, as it closed behind them. The hall was abuzz with conversation, although light and timid, mostly between counselors and representatives. Naruto took his time to scan the pulpits, noticing their bizarre formation, starting low and then increasing one by one, curving into a semicircle. To his left, there was a load of complete strangers, followed by Shikamaru's father, who looked as bored as his son did, but perhaps more tired than bored, as if he had undergone a trying challenge. There was a mountain of a man beside him currently engaged in a conversation with a man to his right, a middle-aged man with a blonde ponytail. Naruto noticed the man give him a quick wave. Huh. Who the hell was this guy? Wait. Was this? No. It couldn't be. Was this his father? They both had blonde hair and he seemed the right age, and also. Hi Dad. Ino quietly whispered to herself, standing right beside Naruto, giving the man a very quick wave, in reply to the one that was directed to her. Well, that answered that question. Moving his attention to the other side, on his right, Naruto noticed that Kurenai and Asuma stood beside each other in thought. Sitting on the pulpits, there was Kiba's mother who he recognized from the academy, with her massive Ninken behind her, a few other complete randomers, then those two old people that seemed to have followed old man Hokage around like a bad habit.
Naruto hated these old bastards, they always sneered at him whenever he'd walk in to talk with the old man. To their left, closer to Kiba's mother than to the end of the row, was what Naruto vaguely remembered was Hinata's uncle or father or brother or something. He looked like Neji aged 50 years. Angry features and everything. He glanced to Hinata who stood 2 places to his left, finding her fumbling and breathing heavily, but keeping it together. In a way, Naruto was proud of her.
Then there was the man at the end of this row, again more elderly than others. There was an X mark on his chin. But what freaked Naruto out was the bandages that seemed to cover him, especially the right side of his face. His left eye appeared closed, but it looked like he was concentrating harder than anyone else. Naruto didn't know what it was. He definitely did not understand it. But everything inside of him, all his instincts, all his gut feelings, screamed at him to avoid this man. His mind grew hazy, as he felt even the fox getting bothered by it. Naruto felt sick, like he was about to vomit. He felt Kiba, standing to his right, give him a quick tap with his foot. Yo, you alright? He whispered, with an eyebrow raised. Naruto returned with a grin. Never better. The buzzing conversation stopped. As an old man, donning jam jar glasses, more beard than flesh, stood up and raised a green scroll, pulling it apart and allowing the bottom half to slide down, revealing the secrets it held within. He cleared his throat. A stillness like nothing Naruto had ever experienced took hold of the hall. May it please the court to begin the proceedings regarding the character testimonies of Genin Uchiha. The individuals before the court have agreed to testify as to the nature of the manipulative characteristics of the cursed seal. It is the task of this council to obtain information from these testimonies as to whether or not the behavior of Genin Uchiha was distorted by the seal.
The individuals shall be called forth by name and rank. They will be asked to take an oath of secrecy, followed by an oath swearing truthfulness in their statements. May it please the court to understand that it is a procedure to have before us in times of testimony the individual for whom this trial is to be conducted. Thus we call as well the court to face for his crimes Genin Uchiha Sasuke, UF 234, Konoha Military Branch, Nara, Team 7. Naruto's eyes widened and his jaw dropped a little. Sasuke was coming here. How? When? Right now. Where was he being held? Was he all right? He glanced quickly to Sakura, only to find her shivering, fists clenched, eyes wet with tears, but open in shock. Flicking his eyes up to his sensei, he noticed that Kakashi hadn't changed at all, and that if anything, his eyes seemed to have hardened. There was a loud banging noise on the door, once, twice, thrice, followed by a bellow. Behold, prisoner approaches, guard the daimyo. We seek permission to enter.
The daimyo. That was the man for whom all this rich formal stuff was happening, right? Who was he? Where was he? Naruto turned finally to the pulpit at the direct center, where he saw a trio of people he knew oozed importance and superiority. To the left, well Naruto's left, sat a thin, wiry man, with a mop of gray-brown hair and a stick-thin mustache. He wore a light gray, blue formal dress with a sky-blue sash. He had, sprawling across his chest, a shawl with the symbol for fire emblazoned on it. This was Hiroshi Nakamoto, the man who might ruin his life. Naruto immediately scowled but didn't let it show. Nakamoto, it seemed, hadn't taken notice of him, preferring to focus straight ahead at the door. To Naruto's right, sat Tsunade Senju, hands by her lap, cherry-red lipstick reapplied, pigtails gone and replaced with what to Naruto looked like a pile of shit. Sakura had tried that once and called it a beehive hairdo. Naruto called it a poodoo and got a smack to the face for good measure. He almost laughed. On the desk of Tsunade's pulpit, rested the Hokage's hat, and wrapped around her gorgeous light pink dress was the Hokage's cloak, although drawn back to reveal, not just her lofty chest, but her bright pink sash. She wore what looked like a large necklace made of cloth, not metal, but it was more like a bandana, around her neck, with the symbol of her clan, the Senju, sewn and visible from the front. She looked empty. Like someone had taken everything from her. The man who sat in the middle, well, if Naruto was given one chance to guess who the daimyo was, among all the people in the room, this man would have to be it. He was covered in the finest embroidered clothing, a bright imperial royal blue dress, with a small deep red cloak for good measure. His hair was long, kind of like Haku's, flowing down past his chair, except for a portion of it that was wrapped into a bun. The symbol of fire, a simple flickering flame, had been carved out of metal and stuck in the middle of the bun as if to hold it in place. He just looked large, although that was probably the clothes. His pulpit slightly higher than Tsunade or the other guys. As for his face, it was thin, pale and scarless and looked as if he hadn't had a day of worry in his whole life. His eyes were small and narrow, out of what appeared to be sheer boredom. He just looked as if he would have preferred to be anywhere else other than here. This was him. This was the man who would decide his fate. His supreme commander, the daimyo of the land of fire. And it was with his tired nod that another samurai shouted, "Enter," and again, two soldiers pulled the green strings which pulled the doors back and allowed those on the other side to enter. That was when Naruto saw him again. In the center of the group approaching them, surrounded on all sides by armed samurai, and two Anbu keeping the rear, wrapped in chains and seals, eyes blindfolded, was Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as he saw him walk to the center, past them even, closer to the daimyo. Whilst Naruto and his group stood in a line near where the pulpits began and rounded into their semicircle formation, essentially the line that would have cut the circle into two, Sasuke approached the center of the semicircle. Despite the obvious constraints he was being forced to deal with, the heavy chains and the seals, Sasuke walked proudly and without stumbling once, although he was definitely slowed. Sakura looked at the spectacle as if she was going to burst into tears. The old man with the glasses and the beard stood up again and cleared his throat. "We present before the court, the accused Genin Sasuke Uchiha, UF 234, Konoha Military Branch, Nara, Team 7. Having confirmed that the accused is not capable of using his bloodline technique, the Sharingan, we ask that his blindfolds be removed." Naruto couldn't see it, because Sasuke stood ahead of him, but he saw Sasuke tilt his head down and shake it slightly, once the wrappings had been removed from his face. "We received the plea of the accused prior to the initiation of the court, but we will reassess due to the presence of the testimonial witnesses." He nodded to another samurai, who looked more formally dressed than the others, with sashes, and a greater amount of armor, as well as a slightly more ceremonial-looking helmet. "Maybe the head samurai." He gave a swift nod and approached Sasuke with 2 quick steps. "Genin Uchiha, here are the nature of your crimes. You are being accused of injury and assault of a fellow shinobi, defection, and dereliction of duty, sedition, and treason to the Hidden Leaf Village. How do you plead?" Sasuke raised his head and rasped out, "Guilty, on all charges." The room lit up with a buzz of discussion, while the young Genin looked on in shock. Naruto felt his heartbeat increase. What the hell was Sasuke doing? Why was he pleading guilty? What was wrong with him? He hadn't heard his voice for a while, but Sasuke sounded dead, dry and tired. As if he hadn't got anything else to live for. Was Sasuke suicidal? What did they do to him? "Your plea is noted. We call the first testimonial to the stand. Step forth, Genin Kiba Inuzuka, ZE 725, Konoha Military Branch, Nara, Team 8. Gritting his teeth, Kiba, who had taken his hoodie off and was holding Akamaru in hand, took a step forward. But the head samurai raised a hand as if to stop him in his path. "Remove your ninkin. It is not giving testimony, thus, it cannot come with you." Kiba flared, but kept his cool. "He is my part N." Silence. "You have not been granted permission to speak. Repeated acts of such insolence will cause your testimony to be thrown out." The roar of the head samurai blared across the hall. "This is not a request. Remove your ninkin from your possession, and step forward," he spat out. Kiba glared and slowly put Akamaru down, taking care to keep eye contact with the head samurai. Well, as much eye contact as you can with a man with a helmet for a face. Akamaru stayed put. Kiba gave him a quick pat on the head and stepped forward. Naruto, glancing up into the pulpits, noticed that Kiba's mother had a worried look in her eye. You will now take the oath of secrecy, followed by the oath of truthfulness. For the next few minutes, the head samurai would say something, and Kiba would reply, I do. It was a long-winded statement that Naruto really didn't pay attention to. He was distracted by the fact that Sasuke looked like he was staring at him from the corner of his eye. But that was unlikely. Your oaths have been compiled. Now, before your testimony, you will bow before the Lord Daimyo. Kiba nearly blew a gasket then and there. He had always had a problem with authority. Whether it was the Lord Third Hokage, or Iruka-sensei, or his own mother. He was loyal, there was no doubt on that part, and he would have no problem bowing to his mother or Lady Tsunade. But this random guy. Kiba didn't fully know what a daimyo was until they told him he had to testify yesterday. So for guidance, he looked to his mother, who gave him a swift and short nod. Kiba sighed. Here goes his dignity. He shakily dropped to one knee, gritting his teeth the whole time through, rising only when gestured to do so. Beardy, as Naruto was going to call him from now on, stood up again. We will now begin the testimony, but first, my Lord Daimyo, is there anything you would like to ask of the witness? The daimyo, looking as tired and bored as ever, his head perched lazily on his bent wrist, his fingers curled inwards, gave the tiniest shake of the head. The focus of the hall turned to Nakamoto, who shook his head to a larger degree, solidifying his boss's answer. What the hell? Was Nakamoto going to give the answers for him? What kind of Sand Village puppetry crap was this? Naruto was confused, but didn't say anything. Not that he could anyway. Well then, said Beardy, the witness is open for questioning regarding his perception of the accused and his behavior. This council is reminded that if any representative has a question they would like to ask, that they please adhere to the formal rules on asking questions in a reasonable and relevant manner. We will go from representative to start the questioning from the right side as is tradition and descend across to the left. If you do not have a question, please state as such. Kiba watched as one by one, shinobi and civilian representative alike from the right side of the hall, his left, arose and proclaimed that they did not have a question. He smiled to himself. Hey, this was easier than he thought. Then he got to Shikamaru's father, who stood up and eyed him. Oh great. Genin Inuzuka, when did you first meet Genin Uchiha? The academy, I guess. Were you always in the same semester and grade together? Well yeah mostly. What were your initial thoughts on Genin Uchiha? Honestly, this was a while back, I kinda forget. What are your thoughts on him now? Kiba hesitated. He had just had a long, vivid spat with Sakura and Ino on how he felt about Sasuke. He'd spent the whole time attacking Sasuke and his decisions, but he honestly didn't know if that was how he really felt about Sasuke. Kiba wasn't the sharpest fang in the kennel, but he knew that defection. Abandoning your family and friends. Betrayal. Being a traitor. Things he would never ever contemplate doing. Those weren't choices you made when you think straight. Sasuke was either evil or insane. So how did he really feel? He took a deep breath and responded from the heart. To be honest with you, I dunno. I definitely don't like the guy. The things he did. For me that kind of stuff is unforgivable, especially considering it hasn't been so long since Orochimaru invaded us and killed the Lord Third. I know there's some stuff going on in his life. I remember a while back he smiled and was kinda happy and stuff. This was when we were kids, so it's been a while like I said and I might be hazy on it. But one day he was kinda happy, the next day he wasn't. This was back when the Uchiha clan incident thing happened, so that might have played into it. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be too right in the head if that sort of stuff happened to me, you know. Sume Inuzuka smiled a little at her son. Kiba was loyal to his core. There was no doubt that Sasuke was a traitor, but if there was even the smallest bit of evidence that his actions weren't done willingly, then Kiba chose not to pass judgment. Loyal to the village, and loyal to his classmate. Genin Inuzuka, what was Genin Uchiha like during your academy days? Kiba growled. He acted like he had a stick up his ass. Whispers and scoffs at his choice of words spread across the hall. Kurenai scrunched her eyes and sighed, as Asuma looked at the proceedings with amusement. Sume made a silent promise to smack her brat after this was over. See. What do you mean by that? I mean he was spoiled. He pretty much thought he was God's gift to the leaf. That he was better than everyone. I really didn't like that attitude of his, but it's not against the law to act like an asshole. Ignoring the further buzz of condemnations and disgust at Kiba's language, Shikaku chose to continue. Genin Inuzuka, have you ever seen Genin Uchiha with his Sharingan eyes activated? Yeah, a few times. Mostly during the exams. Tell us about his behavior during these exams. Well, I dunno. We were separated for most of it, he's not on my team. Tell us what you did see then. He was. I mean, as far as I remember, pretty normal. Sasuke's a competitive guy. I mean, when we had our selection fights in that hall, Sasuke seemed off. I think that's when he got the seal. And it's like he did a 180. Even Akamaru noticed he wasn't the same. Before that, he was the same as always. And then, to be honest, I kinda stopped paying attention to him around then. The seal thing was weird, but it wasn't my problem. Was your mind on other matters? Yeah. Kiba scoffed. I got kicked out of the exam. Sorry, I was a little too busy to think about the personality of Lord Uchiha there. Kiba's voice rang out, dripping with resentment. Shikaku blinked, noticing the rising discontent in the council, obviously annoyed at Kiba's attitude. So he decided to end things quick. I got one last question. Do you think that Sasuke Uchiha's betrayal was voluntary, or was it something predisposed by the seal manipulating him and thereby making it involuntary? Kiba's nose wrinkled. This was the big one. I don't have an answer for that. Sorry. Kiba squeezed his eyes shut. God, he hoped he was making the right decision. Sasuke's not a bad guy. If there's any chance this seal messed with him, you should let him go. The council lit up with quiet discussion. Representatives of all types and clans began making short notes. Kiba chose to focus his sight on the ground. Shikaku stroked his beard. The genin and respective senseis lined up had a mix of different mentions. Sakura had a short, ecstatic smile. Naruto, well, he was happy. Shikaku sighed. No further questions from me. Discussion continued for 10 minutes as counselors debated Kiba's final statement. Beardy stood up and cleared his throat to silence them. Due to time constraints, the court must continue. Is there anyone else who would like to ask questions of the witness? Kiba scanned the pulpits trying to find the next person to ask him questions, finding no one willing to stand up and waste their time asking him useless questions like what he thought about Sasuke's hair or something. Whatever. He didn't care, he just wanted to get this over with. No one seemed in the mood to stand up. Kiba thought it was over for him. Then he saw the man who sat to the right of the daimyo stand up and motion for permission to speak. Damn. This was supposed to go smoothly. Genin Inuzuka. His weird old man voice filled the hall. When you first saw the Sharingan, were you blinded by its majesty? Kiba raised his eyebrow. Excuse me? The Sharingan. Did its splendor make you jealous? Kiba's eyes widened. Anger burst through him. What's that got to do with his seal? Kiba said through gritted teeth. Well, Orochimaru wanted him for a reason, yes. That reason being the Sharingan. I'm simply asking for your opinion on this particular bloodline. If the Sharingan is used for the benefit of the village, then I'm good with it. I'm my own man, I've got my own skills. The Sharingan is cool, yeah. You can copy jutsu, you can steal techniques. You can predict the future or whatever. But you can't copy the bond I share with Akamaru. Kiba stood and eyed the man directly. Sume Inuzuka squeezed her hands under the table with pride. Did Genin Uchiha ever speak of, or imply an intent to betray the village? Nope. Not as far as I can remember. Then if I may, I'd like to speak to you as regards his reasons. Why do you feel the seal was able to manipulate him? Beats me. I'm not a seal's master. But you must know that Genin Uchiha had desires to grow stronger, yes?
So do I, but I don't have any plans to become Orochimaru's servant.
Genin Uchiha's desires bordered on obsession, but were you aware of the reasons? Don't know, don't care. Kiba looked glumly at the man, only to get a sneer in return. I shall inform you. You referred in an earlier answer to the Uchiha clan indent thing, earlier. Yes?
Yes. Do you know the details of this? Naruto, watching the conversation, turned his eyes to Sasuke, to find his old teammate shivering and breathing heavily. Naruto waited for Nakamoto's explanation with bated breath. He knew something had happened with Sasuke's family, something to do with his brother, he just didn't know the exact details. Maybe he'd find out now.
Nah, I don't. All I know is, one day the Uchiha clan was in the village, the next, only Sasuke was there. Quite right. I don't feel as if it's my place to bring up the exact details, and it isn't relevant to your testimony. But I do feel it necessary to ask you this. Following the loss of his family, Genin Uchiha had only his teammates on this earth to consider close to him. How did you see his relationship with his teammates? Well. Sakura. She is good with Sasuke. Kakashi-sensei, he's the only other person in the village with the Sharingan, so, they've got their thing. And he taught Sasuke that lightning jutsu. Naruto. Well, Sasuke and Naruto are. Haha, it's complicated. Would you consider them friends? Well, Saku? I meant Naruto Uzumaki. Would you consider Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha friends? That was it. He had begun to mention Naruto. Naruto started sweating. His pulse raced and his breathing got shallowed. Nakamoto had begun his claim to Naruto. How was he going to go from here? What was he going to do to convince the daimyo that he needed to be locked up and brainwashed? Naruto's concentration was on max. Naruto and Sasuke. Not a chance. They hate each other's guts. Kind of. They're rivals, and they've always been rivals. Naruto would challenge Sasuke in the academy and Sasuke would beat him up. That's how it was for years. Up until now, when Naruto managed to snap the silly out of him. Oh, they have a rivalry. Yeah, it's one of the most obvious things about their team. So, Genin Uzumaki, you would say antagonizes Genin Uchiha? Naruto kind of does that to people. Naruto swallowed hard. He wasn't annoying. Was he? He had always tried his hardest to make the class laugh. To make people like him. But he didn't think they thought of him as annoying. For some reason, Naruto felt embarrassed. Like he wanted to be swallowed up by the earth. Vivid images of sitting alone on a swing and watching the joyous laughter of other children flew through his mind. Did Kiba find him annoying? Who else thought like that? But it's weird. Naruto is a good guy. He just wanted to prove himself. I'm glad he managed to do so. Snapping his head up to Kiba, Naruto looked at his back, gazing at the formal seal of the Inuzuka clan, which was sewn onto the back of Kiba's Monski. A good guy. Yeah, he was. Getting praise, for Naruto, was like a dose of pure happiness. It was all he looked for. And sure, Kiba's praise was short and unexpected and very vague. But in these moments of darkness, for Naruto, it was a beacon of light. Indeed. Do you feel that Naruto Uzumaki's relationship with Sasuke Uchiha changed after the seal? I dunno. This is about Sasuke, right? What's Naruto got to do with it? Please refrain from asking questions. That is our role. Yours is to answer. I will repeat. Do you feel that Naruto Uzumaki's relationship with Sasuke Uchiha changed after the seal? Kiba growled lightly. I told you, I don't know. I wasn't keeping a close eye on Sasuke. All I can say for his personality is that he seemed different after he got the seal. Naruto didn't have anything to do with it. Nakamoto eyed him. Indeed. No further questions, as he sat back into his seat. Beardy stood up and adjusted his glasses. The witness is excused. Kiba breathed a sigh of relief and turned around with a short grin, eyes immediately snapping to Akamaru, who sat up from the floor and wagged his tail at his partner. Beardy got up again. Step forth, Sakura Haruno, Genin RE 442, Konoha Militata Branch, Nara, Team 7. Sakura breathed in deeply, squeezed her eyes shut quickly, and snapped them open, before stepping forward with releasing her breath. She raised her hand while the head samurai read out the oaths of secrecy and truthfulness, firmly saying, I do. With conviction, steeling herself for the questions to come. She stared at Sasuke, who stood a few mere feet away from her, but didn't react. Sasuke. I'll get you out of this. It was Ino's father who started this time. Genin Haruno, you are a teammate of Genin Uchiha, yes? That is correct. Have you known Genin Uchiha for long? For a good few years, maybe 7 or 8 years. My apologies that I can't give you a more accurate number. That's fine. What were your first thoughts on Genin Uchiha? I was rather caught up in the mystique of the Uchiha. Could you elaborate? I was interested to know more about him. I see. Do you remember your first words to him? Sakura's brow nodded as her mind flashed back to images of orange, rusted skies and a red ribbon tied in her hair, a box of sweets in her hand as she waited in the corner which he always passed by on his way home from training. Images of a young boy dashing toward her, and him stopping as she stuck out the box and told him her name, his dazzling, happy smile as he accepted it and apologized to her as he was in a hurry. The past could hurt you in ways that you don't expect. I introduced myself and he did the same. Inoichi looked at her, and flipped one of the papers on his desk over. Genin Inuzuka told us that Genin Uchiha acted spoiled during the academy. Would you agree with this conclusion? I don't fully agree. Sasuke. It was difficult to get close to him. I think the loss of his family. Sakura spoke softly. I think that affected his desire to make bonds. Beardy caught Inoichi's attention and motioned over to a civilian council member who had his hand raised. Inoichi nodded. I yield to the representative from the civilian council. No further questions for now. The civilian council member stood up and looked at Sakura. Genin Haruno, thank you for your service as a shinobi to this village. I'd like to question you on the specifics of the seal. Reports show that you were the only one in the area when Genin Uchiha was given the seal. How did he react? Sakura swallowed. These were memories she wasn't comfortable thinking about. She remembered everything clearly. From Sasuke's sudden and drastic change in attitude and behavior, from a cold calculating ninja to a bloodthirsty killer in seconds. The horrible fever he had and the time he went unconscious. To the most terrifying time in her life, the moment she had to defend both Naruto and Sasuke from the sound ninja using only her kunai. Her personal growth as a person, cutting off her hair when they grabbed a hold of it and threatened her. It was symbolic for her, basically her admitting that her adoption of the ninja lifestyle wasn't for Sasuke, but herself as well. It toughened her up and made her the person she was today. Steeling herself for her answer, she gazed at the council member. We were in the forest of death. Orochimaru had managed to separate our team. He was targeting Sasuke, but we didn't know. When the bite happened, I thought it was weird. Sasuke. He got so sick, I thought he was dying. I thought about opening the scrolls then and there.
Those scrolls, we weren't supposed to open them, but I knew that if Sasuke's life was in danger, it would be worth it. But he stopped me. He told me he was going to be okay. Then he went to sleep and we were attacked. I did my best to keep him safe. Thankfully there was someone to help us. Lee, he saved our lives, Sasuke. Sasuke got up then. He faced Orochimaru's servants, those sound ninja. Sakura swallowed again, tears brimming in her eyes.
He went wild. He went crazy. It wasn't him. Before, Sasuke would just knock people out. This time he not only wanted to kill them, he wanted to torture them slowly before he did it. It was terrifying. That seal hurt messed up his mind 100%. I was there to see it. Sakura was breathing heavily by the end of her speech, eyes darting across the many faces before her. But she had managed to make her point. The civilian council member had sat down in shock. Discussions erupted throughout the council, louder than before. Sakura stared at the ground and thought about what she said. It was necessary. She needed to convince them of what she saw. How Sasuke changed. Why he changed. And why he should be given the chance to be fixed, instead of punished. The sound of shushing spread as it seemed someone else had stood up. Sakura looked up and saw the same man who had questioned Kiba last, the one who seemed to irritate him, the daimyo's right-hand man, was now standing and staring at her mercilessly. Genin Haruno. May I ask, do you have personal feelings for Genin Uchiha? Sakura blinked. What? Was he asking if she liked him? Why? What was the point?
I don't know what you mean. What I would like to understand is the extent of your personal relationship with Genin Uchiha. It is my understanding through various reports, Nakamoto lifted several files from his desk, that you are reported by many sources to have personal feelings for Genin Uchiha. The initial report you gave to your sensei, Kakashi Hatake, was that you asked Genin Uchiha if you could leave with him, is that correct?
Gasps were heard as the council was stunned by the latest revelation. Sakura held her head low and her eyes widened and quivered. Her conversation with Sasuke before he knocked her out ran again and again through her head. Genin Haruno, were you serious in your personal conviction when you uttered those words? Sakura snapped out of her stupor. She was a ninja. And not only was she a ninja, she was a smart one. And this man seemed to be trying to get to her. But she knew without a doubt that she was the one who wanted to see Sasuke freed above all others. And if this man opposed her, then he was, at least in her mind, all in favor of punishing Sasuke. And that was something she couldn't accept. I was not. I was simply trying to do a number of things. Such as, I was trying to stall him by showing him the deep concern I had for him. I was also trying to shock him with these revelations in a hope to gain time for other ninja on a possible patrol to see us. The council lit up again in discussion, as Sakura's response seemed to have doused out most of the fire lit up earlier from Nakamoto's accusations. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. This girl was lying. And not only was she lying, but she was also lying badly. The issue was, would Nakamoto buy it? Of course not. The point of his accusations here was to get Sakura's testimony thrown out as tampered or illegitimate, given her close relationship with Sasuke. But why? Nakamoto's target was Naruto, right? What would Nakamoto gain from this? Genin Haruno. You were present when Genin Uchi and Genin Uzumaki clashed at the roof of Konoha Military Hospital No. 4. Tsunade held her breath. Ah, there it was. Naruto again. Sakura blinked. What was going on here? Why was this guy always mentioning Naruto? Yes, I was. What initiated this conflict? It was Sasuke. I was cutting fruit for him, and Naruto had come to see how he was doing. Sasuke had been put in this hospital after a confrontation with his brother. He screamed at Naruto and seemed to be quite angry with him. I was confused, but Naruto seemed to welcome Sasuke's challenge. They went to the roof, and instead of a light spar, it became a real fight. I couldn't do anything. Just sit back and watch. Sakura's shoulders slumped. Nakamoto peered down at her and opened his mouth. May I ask you now about your feelings towards Naruto Uzumaki? Naruto's heart skipped a beat and his mouth ran dry. Sakura blinked. I'm not sure. My apologies. I don't feel that's really relevant to Sasuke's case. You'll see the relevancy soon enough. I would like to investigate further the dynamics of Team 7. It seems to have been rather successful in terms of accomplished missions. You completed an A-rank mission, fought and defeated one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, liberated the Kingdom of Spring, played a significant role in defeating a tailed beast-led invasion of Konoha. Yet in terms of your personal relationships to each other, it seems like a shambles. I'm curious, do you have feelings for Genin Uzumaki in the same sense that you do for Genin Uchiha? Naruto's heart thumped. He felt something clog his throat. He felt hot and feverish, his breathing becoming shallower. What was going on? Why was Nakamoto asking these questions? He glanced at Sakura, seeing her scrunch her feet. Sakura looked to the floor, then to Nakamoto, and back again. This was not a question she wanted to answer. She knew that Naruto had feelings for her. Heck, who didn't know that? But she had always pushed those feelings to the back of her mind because she didn't feel the same way. She had feelings herself, a heart of her own, that longed to give these feelings to a person, and a heart that lit up when in thought of said person, and unfortunately, it wasn't Naruto she felt this way for. She had always callously or humorously rejected him, trying to get his mind off it, but he would always forget about it the next day and try again, a cycle that would just repeat itself. Sakura hated Naruto at one point. She was cruel, she was vindictive. She was also 12 years old, and having that kind of attitude, especially for a girl her age and her social status, being popular among her peers, wasn't something new. She became the mean girl after being bullied herself. She was attacked for her forehead, and learned that the best form of defense was a good offense. Unfortunately, one of her targets was Naruto. Over time, Sakura became ashamed of her attitude. It was something she always regretted. Something she didn't like thinking about. She felt, genuinely, that she had grown close to Naruto. But as for having feelings for him, that was something she wasn't obliged to give him, and it wasn't something she could. Naruto had done a lot for her, risked his life for her, tried his hardest to please her, but her heart wasn't something she could just turn. Her eyes wandered briefly at Sasuke, still standing still as a rock, except for his more pronounced breathing, facing away from her and towards the daimyo, and then to the bottom right corner of her eye, trying to catch a glimpse of Naruto behind her, but failing as he was out of her sight. Sakura swallowed and prepared her answer. No, I do not. And just like that, Naruto's world grew that little bit darker. Yeah, sure, he got rejected by Sakura on an almost daily fashion at this point. Heck, she had begged him to save Sasuke when she asked him out for a date, the day he left. He had always known that she would choose him. He had always known that she didn't feel the same way. But in his heart, he kept the one thing that was now killing him. Hope. Hope that she may see him for who he was. Hope that he could see how felt about her. Hope that she might one day choose him. Hope that anyone would choose him. He knew that day would never come, and certainly that Sakura might never do any of that. But his heart was so heavy for some reason. Fresh, hot tears threatened to burst, but he kept them back. He was so used to rejection that it shouldn't hurt him at this point, let alone surprise him. But a rejection so public, so scrutinized, one where people were trying to find out the exact type of relationship he had with people, especially when asked by Nakamoto, who seemed to want him locked in a cage forever. A man bent on trying to find a weakness Naruto had. Well, congrats man, you sure found one. Naruto felt everyone's eyes on him, different people expressing different emotions. Voices lit up around him, loud and proud. Some as quiet as a whisper, others louder than the roar of the fox hidden inside him. Some pity, poor kid got his heart broken, others more imaginative. Wow, she ripped him to shreds, chewed it up, and spat it out, haha. Some were cruel. This brat, as if anyone could ever gaze at him with love. Who could love such a hideous monster? Glancing to his right, he saw Kiba staring at him, quickly looking away, hoping to avoid his gaze. Glancing to his left, he saw Ino giving him a soft, pained look, and then a short comforting smile. She mouthed the word, sorry, very quickly to him before turning back to face the front. Naruto stared at the ground and blinked before he gathered up the courage and looked up at Sakura. I see. So suffice to say, that your feelings for Genin Uchiha would not cloud your judgment? Everything I say is backed up by reports present on your own desk. I also swore the oath of truthfulness a few minutes ago. You say that Genin Uchiha was angry at Genin Uzumaki. Why is that? Sasuke felt that Naruto was developing as a ninja at a faster rate than he was. So he was jealous? And would you say this is a trait he possessed and showed to you before? I don't think it was jealousy. It was more so shock at his own inability to grow as fast as Naruto. Sasuke is not the type to be jealous. We have a sworn report from your sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Nakamoto pulled out a form from his files. That details your sensei's perception of Sasuke Uchiha. He feels in these reports that Naruto Uzumaki is outpacing Sasuke Uchiha. And that Sasuke Uchiha was shocked by this development. Sasuke Uchiha began to train at a greater rate than normal, but when that didn't seem to rectify the situation for him, he turned to the seal for power. Sakura could do nothing but stare at him. So the question now is, why do you think Naruto Uzumaki, ranked bottom in your year, grew in power at such an incredible rate, while the last heir of the famed Uchiha clan, the rookie of your year, did not? Shikaku and Tsunade raised their hands immediately. Beardy stood up and motioned to Nakamoto that there were others who wished to ask questions, but Nakamoto shook his head. My apologies to Lady Hokage and to Junin Commander Nara, however, I have not finished my array of questions for the witness. Shikaku stood up regardless. I exercise my right as Junin Commander of the Corps to be instated the questioner for the period. Nakamoto blinked, then smiled briefly. He turned to the board daimyo and spoke softly, but loud enough for everyone else to hear. My lord, the Junin Commander has this right, however, I feel that the questions I ask are important. I beseech thee, allow me to continue.
The daimyo simply eyed him lazily and then nodded. I'll allow it.
Despite the seriousness of the situation, Naruto almost laughed. This guy had the girliest voice he had ever heard. He sounded more like a girl than that little girl Konohamaru walked around with. He sounded like his crown jewels hadn't dropped yet. He sounded okay now. Naruto was getting attention for his fuzzy attempt to stop laughing. He managed to stifle his laughter to giggles which he covered with a cough, but he did raise a few eyebrows. Nakamoto smiled and stood up while an annoyed Shikaku sat down. Thank you, my lord. Now, where was I? Oh yes. Please answer the question, Genin Haruno. I will repeat it for you word for word. Why do you think Naruto Uzumaki, ranked bottom in your year, grew in power at such an incredible rate, while the last heir of the famed Uchiha clan, the rookie of your year, did not? Sakura hesitated. I'm not sure. Naruto was always underestimated by others, myself included. I think maybe people thought way too little of him, and so when he showed skill it was mind-blowing to those who thought he wouldn't amount to anything. But Naruto is. Please allow me to interrupt you there, Genin Haruno. I'd like to show you this testimony from Genin Uchiha, when the Anbu investigators questioned him regarding his fight with Genin Uzumaki. Nakamoto pulled out yet another file from his ridiculous pile and waved it to the crowd. You see, this file contains something interesting. From the testimony, a sworn one given by Genin Uchiha, he details a peculiar event that occurred in the middle of the fight between Genin Uzumaki and him. It seems Genin Uzumaki used a power-up of some sort in order to defeat him. Representative Nakamoto, please stop. Tsunade stood up and glared at the wiry man. The information that you wish to discuss is forbidden, by law, to discuss with those who are unaware of said information, per Section 49, Article 3.5 of the laws set about by the Lord 3rd Hokage, and agreed to and co-signed by the Lord 16th Daimyo. The Daimyo in the middle sat up suddenly and stared at Tsunade. Lady Hokage, what's this about my father? Nakamoto sat up and turned to his boss, my lord. Without turning, the Daimyo raised a hand to silence Nakamoto. Please, Lady Tsunade, explain to me why you stopped Nakamoto from discussing this issue, and what this has to do with the decree my father established. Tsunade bowed politely. Lord Daimyo, your father, the Honorable Lord 16th Daimyo, was asked to investigate the necessity and legality of a decree issued by my predecessor, the Lord 3rd Hokage. Upon reading the decree, he agreed with it and affirmed his support for it. The decree pertains to the information being discussed by Representative Nakamoto here. The Daimyo stared at her. Then I overrule it. Tsunade stared in shock, while Nakamoto smirked. Lord Daimyo, please reconsider. This information is classified for a reason. The Daimyo glared. Are you suggesting that I am unsuitable to be informed of these matters? Tsunade quickly shook her head. Not at all, Lord Daimyo. But I'm sure you'll agree with your father's wise decisions here. This information is classified specifically because knowledge of it to an unspecified amount of people jeopardizes the safety of not just the village, but the land of fire. And perhaps not just the land of fire, but the elemental nations as a whole, Tsunade said firmly. Now you've just made me more curious. How terrible is this information? Were it to slip into the wrong hands, this world is in serious danger, Tsunade said with a pleading look in her eyes. There is no need to discuss this information here. It is not remotely relevant to the case. It's simply a waste of your time, Lord Daimyo. The case is about Sasuke Uchiha and whether or not he was right of mind when he made his choice to defect. That is all we should be discussing. I'm sure you have much more pressing matters to attend to. The Daimyo stared at her, before turning to Nakamoto. And what of you? Why should this information be declassified? Nakamoto turned serious. My lord, the Lady Hokage is correct. This information, if it fell into the wrong hands, would indeed jeopardize the safety of this village, this blessed kingdom of yours, and perhaps the world. That is why it is vital we ensure there are correct measures undertaken to process the information safely. If it is information that is so vital, do you not feel that it is imperative that you should know of it? The Daimyo turned away from Nakamoto and chose to stare at the door of the hall. It happened fast. But Naruto knew what they were talking about. Whether or not to reveal to the hall about Naruto's status as the container of the nine-tailed fox. He didn't know what to feel. He didn't know what to think. He just felt empty. He was beside people he cared about, people who he would gladly risk his life for 100 times over and 100 times again, no question asked. They were his precious people. But how would they look upon him if they were to discover this information? How would they feel about him? Would they reject him further? Would they begin to hate and despise him? Would his own friends fear him? Nakamoto is correct. Naruto lost all color in his face. His life was about to be shattered. All his hard work, to gain the respect of the people who stood beside him, was about to be put to the test. Saliva started building up in his mouth. He felt fuzzy and light. Shikaku stood up rapidly. With respect, Lord Daimyo, I ask permission to speak. You may. I ask that you reconsider as well. This is not information that is relevant to this case, and neither is it something that should be released to this council, where certain individuals are present to whom the unveiling of this information would violate laws set by the 3rd Hokage. Considering both of those factors, it would be improper to continue this line of questioning. Nakamoto stood up. This information has been judged by my colleagues to be irrelevant, but you, my lord, are unaware of it. I believe that is up to you to decide. The Daimyo looked at him. Indeed. Continue, Nakamoto. Hold on there. A voice spoke up, from Naruto's left, proud and confident, but above all firm and comforting. It was Jiraiya, of the Sannin. His mentor. Jiraiya sauntered over to where Sasuke was, standing beside the Uchiha, not because he liked the guy, but because it was the closest he could get to the daimyo, before being pierced by the swords drawn towards him by the samurai. I'll be brief. This is a stupid mistake. Don't reveal this information. All you're doing is putting this village in danger. Now I know that doesn't matter to you high up in your fancy schmancy palace, surrounded by your tinpot soldiers. But this place sure as hell means a lot to us. The daimyo looked shocked that someone had walked up to him and told him no, but Nakamoto was even more shocked. Sue such insolence. My lord, I advise that you reprimand this violator of tradition immediately. I agree, came the annoyed reply of the daimyo. Guards, seize this criminal at once. Wait. My lord daimyo, please, I beg you to reconsider. This man is my teammate, Jiraiya of the Sannin. He has long served this court with honor and distinction. I will ensure that he is reprimanded for his outburst, but I beg of you to reconsider this reclassification. The daimyo wasn't having it. Jiraiya. Ah yes. The street rat. My father often spoke of you and your heretical ways. You, who do not even bow in my presence. Grounds for sedition. I wonder why it is you're not on trial. Jiraiya glared at him, but a pleading look from Tsunade told him to stay quiet. The daimyo turned to Tsunade. These events have caused me to reconsider my initial assessment of you, Lady Tsunade. My orders are thus, Nakamoto, continue your questioning. Any order to classify information related to this issue is hereby overruled. Tsunade sank in her seat in defeat. Jiraiya glared at the daimyo before sticking his tongue out at the samurai who had their swords drawn at him. Turning around to go back to his position, he looked at the defeated eyes of his student. I'm sorry, kid. I'm so sorry. Naruto gave him a small smile back. Nakamoto gleefully bowed. Thank you, my lord daimyo. As Nakamoto stood up to continue his question, his eyes drifted to Naruto's sunken face. They caught each other's gaze, and for a moment, it was as if there were no other people in the hall except for the two of them. In Naruto's mind, everything turned white, the pulpits and the people disappeared. Nakamoto still stood above him high and mighty, like a king scowling at a lowly servant. Slowly, Nakamoto floated down and stood on the same level at Naruto. Naruto looked at his beady gray eyes, and Nakamoto peered into Naruto's blue lamps. Naruto's face didn't change. If anything, he clenched his teeth harder. Nakamoto just smiled. And smiled and didn't stop smiling, as he ascended back to his position, floating while never once looking away from Naruto. The background returned to the flashy marble of the hall. The people faded back into existence. And then Nakamoto opened his mouth. Thanks.